Okay, so mitigate here once again. I am no longer sick, so I am back at work. However, I am, as weird as it is to say, somewhat hyped to see how this wrestling show goes with Phil and Ashton. And it could be awful. It probably will be awful, but I feel like there's a potential for some serious gold dust. And I'm not saying that the potential is high. I'm saying that if there is gold dust and the potential is probably very low, that might be exquisite gold dust. And I think that makes it worth watching. So I'm going to do a react to the guy. It is, later in the day. So the show has already concluded, but I have not spoiled myself, and I'm cautiously optimistic to getting some gold dust today. So I was planning on doing that despite my return to work. And I just wanted to make it kind of over that hump. And I'm probably going to stop doing this in the future just because, I just don't have too much time to mess around watching the guy. So, but I was like, well, there's only a couple podcasts between now and then, and I am stuck at home during those days. Like, it is a Sunday. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it. Right. So, I went to react to the guy, and, Monday. So Monday I was off work because we had some severe weather. So I thought I'm going to react to the podcast from Sunday because I missed that one. And then I'm going to catch Sunday's podcast with the guy live, and I'll do a live react. And then I'll like be caught up. And then once I finish watching the wrestling show, then like that can be a nice like bookend to this whole little thing that I'm doing here. Well, it's unfortunate. I am displeased to admit that I have self-felted myself, and I recorded the react to the podcast from Sunday. And when I got done with it, I had my desktop audio muted the entire time. So you cannot hear the guy whatsoever. And I was not going to try to like match up an audio track to it. I might still later, but so I did all that. And then I went to like watch it back and do some editing, remove some dead air, coughs, whatever. And I am felted. So let's see what the guy is up to, kind of retrospectively here, because I have the stream pulled up. Okay, so just kind of drinking in the logo, the screen that DSP has decided to present us with, and we have this going on. And so I am vaguely aware, because like I said, I didn't watch the podcast from yesterday. I'm vaguely aware that DSP said he was going to call it Smart Guys and just reuse the name from when he did this similar thing with John Rambo. And I feel like that's like, I don't know, like, people have mixed opinions on John Rambo, but like he definitely seems like a much more normal dude than our boy Philly. And given how their relationship fell out, like it just seems a little wrong to reuse that brand. Because like let's face it, the guy's not going to get like, he's not going to get like a big audience returning of like people who just have like a Google alert set for Smart Guys, and like, oh my God, a new episode of Smart Guys came out after 15 years. Oh my God. Like that's not going to happen. Right. So like, what's the motivation to keep the name? I don't know. I did, like I said, didn't watch the podcast. I'm aware that he announced it. He probably had some stupid, boring, long-winded explanation for it. I don't care at this point to check it out. So I think we have a little time before we are graced with the guy. So I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit here, but the rules remain intact. So my goal doing the react is I'm not going to watch the guy any faster than 1.25 speed. Right. And I'm not going to skip ahead. Right. I'm not, and unless I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best not to skip ahead. So I just got home from work. I had to shovel snow, and now it is time to chill and relax and watch the guy. So just trying to find the spot. Okay, so here we see the dented opening. So this seems like a reasonable place to start. Let's go. At DSP Gaming Real is so funny to me. It's classic. Classic the guy behavior, let me tell you.
I'm gonna be completely honest with everyone. After I move, I'm gonna have limited time to watch stuff. I'll probably still watch Raw and SmackDown. But I don't know, man. This might not make the cut if they don't spruce up. You know what I mean?
So I'm just gonna let this go, and we're just gonna drink in whatever opening Phil's got cooked up for us.
You know what I'm talking about.
It's a fair point.
When you see like a show, because you love wrestling, you watch it and you see something.
You know what I mean?
There's more than enough wrestling that I still.
I was talking over it, so let's start over.
Everyone, after I move, I'm gonna have limited time to watch stuff. I'll probably still watch Raw and SmackDown. But I don't know, man. This might not make the cut if they don't spruce up. You know what I mean?
There's more than enough wrestling that I watch and I enjoy. That I don't need watching stuff that pisses me off.
No, it's true.
Makes me upset and freaking, you know what I'm talking about.
It's a fair point.
When you see like a show, because you love wrestling, you watch it and you see something, it actually hurts you. It's like, it makes you sad.
10 years later.
I love this MS Paint background we're working with here. Did a real, true, and honest fan make this? I have to ask. Like, this is god awful. Like,
wow, what is going on, everyone? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Smart Guys Revival, live here on DSP Reacts on YouTube and also on DSP Gaming Real on Kick. Woo, that was a long 10 years. Ladies and gentlemen.
Whoa. Wait a minute, Phil. I thought we were calling the show Benoit Boys. I thought we were calling it Benoit Boys. You were telling me how Benoit was your favorite wrestler. You had all these theories that it was actually Kevin Sullivan who killed Nancy. We were gonna do it. We were gonna do a deep dive into how it was Kevin Sullivan who was responsible, how he framed Benoit. What are you telling me? Wow. It's called Smart Guys. I thought it was Benoit Boys.
Well, I mean, if we want it to be the shortest running show in.
Okay, so I'm all right pausing, and I'm gonna keep this short and sweet. But like, just drink in the juxtaposition between the energy that Triple P brings to the table versus the energy that Phil has, right? Like I understand that Triple P is making some like wrestling references or whatever, and they should land with Phil. Like, I feel like he's smart enough to use references that from like when Phil was still involved. But like I've said this previously on different episodes of reacting to the guy, but like, love or hate Kino Casino, like they know they get the showmanship portion of it, right? Like, I'm not saying the content's good and I'm not saying it's worth watching, but like, he has the ability to impart that energy into his presentation, which DSP just is not capable of doing. Anyways, back to the guy.
Wrestling commentary history, I guess we could call it that.
Benoit for the Hall of Fame. Ride the Bowflex. Maybe ride the Bowflex. But no, it's good to be here with you, King Phil.
It's good to have you,
legend. You had a huge run with John Rambo back in the day. Legendary show, Smart Guys. I'm so proud to be a part of the revival. Wrestling's back, bitch. It's on Netflix and it's cool again. At least if you're 400 pounds and autistic dented like me, then you love wrestling. It's back and it's cool. Guys, it's going to be a great show today. And already big support.
Yes.
Perry the White for 50 Great British pounds. Let's go. Fuck yeah, Perry. And Ives for $4.99 saying total PPP victory. Let's fucking go. Now, Phil, it's been a while since you've watched wrestling.
Okay, so again, I'm pausing, but that is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that Triple P brings the energy to the whole thing, right? Like I legitimately felt a little excited when Triple P was doing that, and that's how you do it. Like, that's how you run a show. That's how you hype people up.
You quit during the fucking scamdemic era, Underdome era. There were no. Tell us about it, Phil. What led you to quit wrestling, and now you're back?
Well, here's the thing. Like, we kind of have similar history as lifelong wrestling fans, but I ran this wrestling commentary show called Smart Guys for about 3-4 years, you know, back at the height of my YouTube popularity. And then it ended in 2014 when I moved across the country, and, you know, I basically had as everyone knows, kind of a falling out with those guys, and never really got back into the world of pro wrestling when it came to making content about it. But I continued to watch it for several years after that, and every once in a while I would do like a wrestling sim in my content or whatever. But then around the era of COVID 2020, when WWE had to do these empty arena shows.
This is all like a history lesson that those of us that watch the Prestream podcast are like, we've already gotten this several times this past 7 days.
If you want to be up on pro wrestling, you've got to watch so many shows. You got to watch Raw. You got to watch SmackDown. You got to watch NXT. But wait, on WWE Network, they have the Cruiserweight show. They've got the Mae Young Classic and this. But wait.
Dragon Cat 2 in the kick chat. We don't need your life story, brother. Let's just get to the wrestling. Well said.
In the world of pro wrestling, I just got so burnt out. And then now to see these empty arena shows and
and we got a LARPer in the chat, Nicholas Taylor. Didn't Phil spend all his money on a wrestling game? Thinking emoji. I'm new to Phil.
Is that crowd?
Well said.
Getting into the promo, the cheering, the booing, and when it all went away, it just felt so empty and boring. And I was like, I'm either gonna keep watching and be disappointed, or I'm gonna cut it. So I cut it cold turkey, and I really haven't even seen a wrestling match.
He do be yapping though.
About 5 years. Until last night, when I watched the premiere episode
now,
of Raw on Netflix.
Is that true, Phil? Lots of people are skeptical of this claim. You're saying in the last 5 years you've not watched a single match, no WrestleMania, no Royal Rumble, no Survivor Series?
No, the last match that I saw was Drew McIntyre versus Brock Lesnar for the title at WrestleMania, whatever the WrestleMania that was, 2020. You know, I think they were at the Performance Center. And by the way, thank you to Wolves for another $5 super chat. He was correct.
He says it's pronounced Wolves, sir. My apologies. Maybe if you add an extra 0 to that super chat, we'll pronounce the name properly. But, like, we need at least $50 from you, buddy. Come on. What's going on? It's the return of Smart Guys. Let's get some fucking donos in here for Philomania. It's running wild with the Philomania brothers. The power of Philomania is running wild on you with PPP here in the house. So I'll give you my perspective. I feel...
Okay, so this is, again, same thing, like the shit. I had somewhere I was going to go with this. I'm probably going to have to cut this out because I completely forgot my train of thought. What was it? Oh yeah. So I remember now. So like when you're watching Kino Casino and they do these like this level of energy that Triple P like has just put into this whole like I don't know what you want to call it. This whole like, give us another, 10x that dono, and we'll consider pronouncing your name right. Like when you put this kind of energy into doing it, it's really easy for you, the audience, to accept that this is a tongue-in-cheek, like, begging segment. It's self-aware. Like, we're doing it for the laughs. Like, we appreciate the money, so on and so forth. But like but that's. That's the part that Phil doesn't get. That's the part that our boy Phil is not capable of doing. He cannot, like, he's so low energy. He can't get over that minimum level that makes his big segments like at least entertaining.
Your pain, Phil. It's such a time commitment to watch professional wrestling. And the problem with professional wrestling is that most of it is garbage. You're watching 3 hours of Raw, 2 hours of SmackDown, 2 hours of NXT. Half the time, if you are watching week to week, you're fucking skimming through the shit.
Right.
A lot of it you don't have interest in. You have to fast forward, stuff like that. It eventually got to the point for me where I just watched the pay-per-view. I would just watch the pay-per-view each month, and I would just watch recaps of Raw or whatever segment I needed on YouTube. And I was watching fairly consistently. I got into the Bloodline story with Roman Reigns and all the Samoans, which is past your time.
Yeah.
But once that jabroni Cody Rhodes won the title at WrestleMania, this bitch bum Cody Rhodes, who could never, ever hold a candle to the true legends of the business, I've kind of been on and off since WrestleMania 40. I felt like with a lot of Cody Rhodes' title run, it was just really predictable. Like, at no point did I ever think that any of the guys he wrestled were going to beat him for the title.
Right.
Because I've known that The Rock's probably coming back to face him at WrestleMania this year.
Oh, really?
They needed to give
That's
him
the rumor,
a big, long run. You know what I mean? So I've been like, kind of checked out on it. the bloodline storyline that they introduced with now there's the Tom.
Okay, so because Triple P is here, we're gonna go back to normal speed. But I think I can talk over it because I think he's just giving like
as the previous parts of that storyline. But I loved Roman being.
He's just giving backstory to WWE, which I do not care about. So, you know, looking at these two backgrounds here, it now makes sense where Phil is saying, I want a minimalist background, like, because Triple P has so much shit crammed into his background, and like that's the look. It works for him. It does what he's trying to do. Phil, like always, he chooses the worst of all options. He's tried to go through this weird middle ground because like he doesn't want to copy Triple P, but he thinks he needs to do something so his setup looks better. So he's chosen the exact worst option.
Monthly pay-per-views and recaps and stuff
right,
like
Phil's chosen to only have a little bit of shit, so it just looks tacky. It looks it looks like he's putting in some effort, but not enough to like make it worthwhile. So it's with this weird space between being like being like reasonably populated so that all the pieces kind of are a cohesive whole, which is like what PPP's doing, and having like an actual minimalist clean background. He's in this weird gray middle zone that's just off-putting.
Just overall thoughts on Raw coming to Netflix, Phil?
Well, the thing is, so I've been completely out of touch with wrestling for about 5 years.
Can we get another history lesson, please, Phil?
Some of the plots, not the matches. Like I haven't seen the matches, but I had been following like pro wrestling on like Twitter for a long time. So for a while, I was still getting it in my feed, and I would know, oh, Roman Reigns is now the tribal chief. I would know about the plot lines and things like that. It got to the point where even like my social media feed was so inundated with wrestling that I unfollowed it all. So for like now, for about, I say 2 years, I haven't even followed.
So history segment.
As many people know, I play a mobile game called WWE Champions. And
whoa,
wait, I admitted it.
Wait a minute, Phil brought it up. Hold on, Phil. I was supposed to press you about this later.
Do you think this bit was scripted? Like, hey, we're going to talk about WWE champions and we're going to pretend that it's a big deal.
Discuss the plot lines. So I'm kind of like semi-aware that there was a new bloodline and that Roman lost the title and now Cody's the champion. I kind of know that stuff. It's just I don't know the real match outcomes of the plots. I just know the generalities of what's going on. So me going into watching Raw on Netflix last night was like, I didn't know what the matches were going to be. I didn't know what the plots were leading up to it. I was hoping.
Yeah, you're clueless. We get it. Can we move on, please, Phil?
On the background. But I also knew that if this is a big flagship show for them, it's the first time they're jumping a network in a long time, and they want to, really announce everyone get Netflix, they're going to go all out. And they really did. Like, in general, my thoughts about the show, even though it was 3 hours long, it didn't kind of feel like 3 hours long, which is good. They kept it moving between matches and segments. Nothing felt overly too long or taking up too much time. It was a mix of old.
I feel like this is exactly the opposite of the answer that PPP would want Phil to give, right? Like, oh, the show was 3 hours long, but it didn't feel that long. Well, okay, so it was a good show. Tell me why it was a good show. Don't like Triple P, he's really just handing him these like softest intros. Like here, Phil, like I'm gonna throw underhand this time. Like, just hit it as hard as you can, buddy. And then again, because this guy's clueless and sucks at his job. Like there's nothing here.
New, like if you're someone who hasn't seen wrestling in a very long time, you're gonna recognize faces that they've got coming to try to get that nostalgia factor. At the same time, if you like the modern product, there was a lot of that. There were 4 big matches from the modern superstars. And in general, I think the production quality, I was shocked. Now, I don't know if all WWE actually looks like this or not at this point, because I haven't seen a match in 5 years. But that to me looked like the level of production of like a WrestleMania. Like it was big, the camera shots, the background, the giant screens, and just the shots and everything. I felt like I was watching the biggest event of the year. for pro wrestling. So I don't know if they're
like, presumably Triple P has like a roadmap for how he wants this show to go, and
that was a pretty darn good way to start it.
clearly Phil is not in on the plan here, right? Like I don't know what Triple P's like strategy is, but I think he knows enough of Phil, enough about Phil, that like he has to like make sure to carry, like he needs to set this show up for success. And like, this is, if you're gonna set up a show, like an episode of a show up for success, it has to be the first one, right? Because if the first one is hot garbage, then you're not going to get people tuning in for episode 2, right? Especially when like these people have existing audiences, and like they know, like, at least from Triple, like their individual audiences kind of know what to expect. So if you're gonna be like below like what is considered watchable for your viewers, like your show doesn't have a chance, right? So like I'm willing to give Triple P enough credit that he has kind of like a series of islands, some like ideas and things he specifically wants to talk about, like laid out, and just given Phil's predilection for rambling, incoherent, boring responses, I feel like Phil is probably not in on it. And I don't think that's Triple P like trying to pull one over on Phil. I think it's because he knows that Phil can't be trusted with that information.
For the longest time, production was run by Kevin Dunn, the Bucky Bucktooth bitch boy of The Office, who only had a fucking job because he saved his father, I think, saved the tape library for Vince from a burning fucking car. So Vince felt like he had to let Kevin Dunn have this fucking job, right? And Kevin Dunn, his production was it was fucked. It was so ADHD and frantic. You'll notice camera wasn't cutting every 3 seconds or on every fucking move. It looks completely different. And the way Kevin Dunn did production back in the day, it was like you would know what was about to happen in the match just based off the way the cameras were cutting. This move's coming now this move is coming. Now it's not so ADHD, like the camera actually stays on the action. It's more like a sports presentation.
Wasn't it infamous that Kevin Dunn completely botched Edge's return at the Royal Rumble, where Edge was coming out and the camera cut away, and like, what the fuck are you doing? Go back, you fucking idiot. It's supposed to be the giant, return of a superstar who we never thought would wrestle again, and how do you botch that?
YouTube Prisoner brings it up that, Kevin Dunn was one of Vince's stooges. He knew all about all of the dirty sexual depravity of Vince and the harassment of everyone was going on. But the truth is about Vince, because there was no mention of Vince McMahon at all on this show.
That's right.
Not in the intro package, no credit to him whatsoever. The only McMahon family member we saw on this entire broadcast was Stephanie for like 2 seconds. And even then, they hesitated to call her Stephanie McMahon.
Right.
and I don't think...
Okay, I'm very quickly, like, the wind is leaving my sails here. Like, I'm really not seeing this going the way I'd want it to.
What a change.
There's still the potential for gold dust, but, like, we have to get through the actual wrestling part of the show first, I think. And, God, I do not care about wrestling at all.
UFC together.
That's right.
Which could lead to a lot of crossovers and promotions. I'm surprised it hasn't, where they haven't had like UFC people showing up in WWE yet and doing that. They have Logan Paul, and there's thoughts that perhaps like Logan Paul might have a fight with Conor McGregor later on in the year and stuff like this, or that Logan Paul might get into the UFC side and cross promote between UFC.
Is Logan Paul, like, does he actually do anything on the wrestling scene? Like, I know he's done the boxing stuff or whatever, but like, I feel like the boxing is too like, or the wrestling is too like transparently fiction. Like, I feel like he does the boxing thing for clout, right? And like, I think like if he was involved in the WWE, like that would give him more like fame. But I don't think that's what the guy is after, right? He wants people to like respect and fear him, and I'm not sure you get that like moving into the professional wrestling space.
Sent from Raw to SmackDown, and you could see his reaction live. He was fucking rattled.
I will say that this show is already like infinitely better than the normal content that DSP makes. Because one, like, this guy, honestly, yeah, like let's be clear. Ashton here is doing the lion's share of the heavy lifting, right? Like he is going off. He's keeping the energy up. He has obviously has a lot to say, right? And then this guy over here, like he's just silently like updating the leaderboard, and like we're not getting these extended shout out segments because he just doesn't have time and he's not willing to talk over Triple P, and that's good. That helps the quality of the show.
Wow. He would make them do like humiliation rituals and crazy shit like that. So there isn't that anymore in WWE. So it's a fresh new era. People are going to be able to come in and it's not going to have the stink of McMahon on it, stuff like that. So it's interesting. Let's start off the top of the show.
Actually, let's do some shout outs because a bunch of contributions came in. Let's get them out of the way.
Let's throw the brakes on and do some shout outs.
Here we go. Let's get the money.
Four gifted subs over on Kick. Thank you to Dick Jones for that. Appreciate that. We got Falcule with a $5 super chat. This is the King and PPP together at last, shooting on the business, stunning the distraction.
I will say that like that was a pretty smooth transition from Triple P, right? Like his like ability to see what Phil was doing, yield the floor, and then immediately like change gears into hype, like let's do some money talk. I think that was actually pretty good. Again, I can't say that I'm a fan, but like
not just a new era of wrestling, but a new era, the DSP era of the wrestling show.
Clearly the guy understands how to do a radio show, right? Like he's been doing it with, and we're getting an extended beg segment from Triple P. But like, it's my understanding that that's how things go on Kino Casino.
All day, all night, every. Oh, and then watching Raw, he's taking notes, he's paying attention, he's here. Let's reward the effort from Phil, guys.
Thank you to James over on Kick, who also gifted a sub over there.
There's no way that DSP isn't going to at least hit the goal. Like, all right. There's no way that's not happening.
All right. Let's get started, shall we? Let's start talking about Raw, right? How it opened.
So I was hyped up. I was excited. It starts off with like a countdown timer to the show. I'm like, oh yeah, it's a new era.
Okay, so this is an interesting thing to point out, I think, and clearly we don't have too many interesting things to point out at the moment, but like here, okay, so Phil signaled to PPP like, hey, I'm done. I am satisfied with the money segment. Now it's time to move on, right? And I think that I suspect that Phil had something cued that he was gonna say after that, right? But Triple P, like when he saw that opening coming up, he immediately began making noise to communicate to Phil, like wordlessly, like he was making noise, yeah. But he's like, I'm gonna start a syllable, and that way this buckethead, he's gonna understand that I am about to say something, and if he's willing to let me say something, and obviously Phil's willing to let Ashton do whatever he wants, like he's gonna shut the fuck up, and I'm gonna be able to kind of like get this thing back on the rails and bring some energy back into the room.
It's so exciting. And then it cuts to the lobby of the Intuit Dome, and you hear Michael Cole announce and Pat McAfee. And instantly I was anti-hype.
Well, because did we know that they were going to be the announcers? Again, I had no preconceived notions, no knowledge. I didn't know who the announcers were going to be. I thought maybe they'd bring back Jim Ross for a one night or something. But was it known that they were going to be the announce team?
They've been.
And just for clarification purposes, that's like a really common technique when you're like just having a conversation with someone, is you signal that you have something to say and you would like space to say it by like making noise before they finish saying the words that they are currently saying. Like, hey, I'm signaling to you. Like, this is like a normal part of human behavior, right? But I'm kind of surprised that this guy picked up on it.
Fucking stand Michael Cole. I've never ever fucking Michael Cole. WWE commentary has been in the shit ever since Michael Cole took over. Once they phased out JR and Jerry Lawler as the main commentators, we have been in the dark ages of commentary for too decades.
Yeah.
The guy
And
fucking sucks.
when I grew up, the commentators were just as much a part of the program as the wrestlers. I mean, think about
When Phil grew up, do you guys think Phil grew up?
these guys.
Is he still growing up?
Big personality to the show. Half the time they'd be going off on tangent conversations that had nothing to do with what was in the ring, but it was entertaining. It hooked you. And then they would have former wrestlers. Like, remember when Macho Man was on commentary for a while? That was highly entertaining. And then you had JR and you had...
So it's clearly becoming like apparent to me that this is probably going to be what the show is.
Stop kind of having that level of banter and instead have more like serious...
And like, you know, that's okay. Like if there's no gold dust to be had here, then the odds of there being gold dust on subsequent shows is pretty low. But like, that's okay. Like that means that it's just another piece of content that Phil's involved in that's just not worth watching.
Like 18 fucking months.
Not worth watching for different reasons than typical, but still not worth watching.
Underrated, and people shit on Miz way, way, way too much. But the Michael Cole stuff, that's probably why people didn't like Miz back then and gave him the respect that he actually deserved and earned. Remember back then, like when Miz first came in, he had to change in the fucking hallway.
Yeah.
Everybody made fun of him. They hazed him. They treated him like shit. He overcame all of that, ended up main eventing WrestleMania and stuff like that. But I think a lot of the reason why some people don't remember Miz fondly is because the Michael Cole stuff, it was just too much. It was so cringe. And because he's commentating over everything back then, there was no break from him whatsoever. Now, I know a lot of people today like to try and praise Cole and say that he's improved. But let's be real. The only reason this guy was ever around was because he was Vince McMahon's human fleshlight, human sock puppet bitch that Vince commanded and dictated the commentary through him.
Right.
Basically
like,
a
doesn't he
fucking
just talk right through?
ventriloquist dummy.
Yeah, they would talk right through the headset and tell him exactly what to say.
Cole.
Yeah.
Tell him it's good shit, Cole. Like, fuck. It was fucking brutal. And now that Vince is out of his ear, it's like, oh, he's free. He's free. But he's still free to fucking suck. So it was like, I just wish we could get some commentators. I watched Saturday night's main event. Now, you didn't see it, but WWE was actually on NBC when they brought back the old Saturday night main event branding. They had Jesse Ventura on commentary for the main event.
Wow.
And which you'd think would never happen.
Yeah.
After Ventura was thrown out for trying to start the wrestling union,
right.
Hogan stooged on him because he didn't want the rest of the boys to get the money that he was getting. Hogan, why would Hogan, not just keep himself at the top? He screwed everybody over, right? But they brought Ventura back, and he was great on commentary. It was just such a refreshing.
Okay, this is quickly losing my interest. So we're gonna do one of them.
They could get better commentators. So that was one thing where I'm like, oh, I'm hyped for the new.
So the rules still apply. Like still not trying to go faster than 1 1/4. Still not trying to skip ahead. Just hoping. Begging for something actually interesting to happen. And like, I think I said it already, and that's how little there is to say about this little program, is that this is so much better. Like the bottom line, it's so much more watchable than Phil's normal content. And it's because PPP's doing 80% of the talking.
It was shot and set up spectacularly. It's LA. All the celebrities were there.
It feels like some of PPP's energy has rubbed off on Phil, but not enough to actually prevent the segments where Phil is talking. Like, not enough to prevent those segments from lagging, right? So, a rising tide, floats all ships or whatever, but yeah, not enough to save the guy from just being just boring.
And Brian Last will be out of a fucking job. The trust fund bum that he fucking is.
Yeah, but it's crazy. This promo, when it opened, it's like they immediately start talking about storytelling, right? And they're talking about heel versus face, and basically what we know.
Like DSP, I know I got it sped up, but it feels like DSP is at least a little more animated than typical, and it feels like he's actually talking at like normal human speed, right? And that's because PPP is talking at like superhuman speed, because I can't think of a different way to say it that doesn't carry some implications. Like
the storytelling like they did.
That's where we are.
Really smart way. And I think that the way that they did all of this was really, really smart, the way that they laid it out, because the first objection you get when you tell somebody you're a wrestling fan, which most people are ashamed to admit, you know, it's kind of like admitting like you have a mental illness or like you're a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, something cringy, because that's just the way most people look at it, because wrestling is so polarizing. Either you love wrestling or you hate it. There's very few people who are in between. Right. Either you immediately or like you fall in love with it as a kid and you watch it, or you're like, I just don't get it. This is gay, it's lame, it's fake. So immediately your pro wrestling is fake. And what this is an attempt to answer that objection, to say, why should you care even though it's fake? And it's to say, it's you just like any other TV show that's fake, like Breaking Bad or The Sopranos or The Wire. These are characters that you get invested in. But it wasn't just that. They brought it back to the roots, and this is why I love pro wrestling. Pro wrestling is one of the few forms of entertainment left that's like a traveling circus, where it goes from town to town, and it's a live performance in front of people every single week, and it depends on connecting to that audience and getting them engaged in what you're doing. And it's incredibly, what's his name? Werner Herzog said,
okay, so I'm gonna pause at Triple P here for a second. So, like, when I was growing up, I had a friend that really loved wrestling. Like the guy, like actually wanted to be a professional wrestler when he grew up, and like he knew that it was all quote unquote all fake or whatever. Like he wasn't a stupid guy, right? But he just, for whatever reason, he really loved wrestling. I did not, right? And even as a kid, as me being like, I don't know how old I was, 8, 10, 12, somewhere in there, like I recognized that it was all like, I remember thinking of it as like a soap opera with like physical contact, right? And I'm like, well, I don't like soap operas, so like why would I care about wrestling, right? Because like like is it impressive, the things that the physical capabilities of the people that participate, that do the wrestling? Absolutely, right? No knock on the talent of the performers and making it in that business, but like even as a kid, like that wasn't really a secret. Like, but this read on it that Triple P had described of like, either you really liked it, and so you were a big enough fan that you were willing to admit to the world that you were a fan, and it became a big part of your identity, because when you admit that, like, you have to be a certain level to even admit in public that you like wrestling, versus people being like, wrestling's lame and I don't care about it. Like that was true to a sense. I'm honestly not sure that's ever going to go away, because this whole like, why is wrestling like a worse show than, something like another scripted show like Breaking Bad? And I'm like, well, I think the intention, like, I think it's because wrestling is at a weird intersection of drama and live theater and like physical performance, right? And those aren't typically, that's a weird intersection. And I'm not saying it's inherently bad. I'm just saying that like if you remember when you were like in high school or whatever, like you had like the jocks and the theater kids and the like I don't know, like the tech kids, right? Like, and those circles often didn't have a ton of overlap. And since this kind of resides in that same space of you have like the creative side where you have like the dramatization and the writing or whatever, and then you have the performance side of like the theater aspect to it, and like literally theater, right? It is theater that takes place on a stage. It's just the stage looks different, right? And also the whole, the physical aspect of it, that is really kind of one of the odd ducks out here, right? And I think part of the problems people have with it is because like typically in theater, especially when you're younger, like if you're exposed to theater at all, you're exposed to theater that's trying to cover like some big concepts, right? Like you're talking The Sound of Music, you're talking Les Miserables, like these are like, dramas that portray some sort of like big social issue, like historical or not, right? And so then you have the the physical aspect of it. And I think that for like the people who are kind of snooty about theater, who expect that sort of like social commentary coming out of the theater, like they see that as like tainting they see it as like tainting the art, right? I'm not saying that's true. I just think that that's the read that a lot of people who are like big into theater but want nothing to do with wrestling, I think that's like where that falls. And unfortunately, I think there's an economic component to this, right? Because like I think that similar to, maybe not to the degree of pro wrestling, but like when I remember, like when I was a kid, like NASCAR was one of those things that like you didn't really tell people that you were into. I again wasn't into NASCAR, but I didn't really know anyone that was, right? And I think that's because for the the kind of crowd that it attracts, like one, you have a lot of people because you think of your typical NASCAR fan, right? Like those are, I think those people are like stereotyped as being, white trash, so to speak. And there's a lot of that same stereotype that is also involved in like the stereotypical professional wrestler fan, right? And so like you have people who might otherwise be willing to give pro wrestling a chance or NASCAR a chance, but they don't want to be seen as being associated with people of that like social economic status, right? So, and then you also have the fans that are like, there is a non-zero number of fans who are into wrestling who legitimately think it's real. Like I think most people who get into wrestling at a very young age, like as a kid, you're a dumb kid, so you don't realize that it's that it's all drama and it's all theatrics. But most people like grow out of that, but there are a non-zero number of people that don't, right? And I think that that's part of why like being seen as a pro wrestling fan typically has this this negative connotation to it, is because most people are likely aware of someone, like they grew up knowing someone or knowing of someone, like there was someone in your grade or someone in your school who thought pro wrestling was the coolest thing ever and would talk you up and down about how it is 100% real. It is not fake whatsoever. And you are like the idiot because you think that it is. Like, and I think that because those people, and again, because there's such a slim representation of fans of like quote unquote normal people who are into wrestling, like that is what becomes the type of like when you think of wrestling fan, like that's the kind of person you picture. And it's like, well, I'm not that person, right? I really like wrestling, but I obviously understand the that it is a drama, it is an art, and it is not quote real, and I'm not like a fanatic about it, so I'm not going to like make people weird and uncomfortable by insisting on talking to them about wrestling all the time, and I'm not going to start arguments over whether wrestling is real or not, blah 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 blah. Like do I like it a lot? Yes. Do I live and breathe it because I think that these characters and these situations in which they're placed in are actually real and true? No. Right. And I think that's how you get this stigma around being a fan of wrestling that PPP is talking about. I'd also like to say, like, I'm glad that someone finally said something that was somewhat interesting.
It's perhaps the most primitive form of entertainment he's ever seen, because it really is. It's two people just going out into a ring and just wrestling. And there's few props. There's like steel chairs, stuff like this. They talk, but it really does come back to its roots in like the theater, in ancient Greece, or a Shakespearean play, or the traveling circus. And I like that they touched on that. Yeah. I like that they touched on its carnival roots, its circus roots. And, all of those forms of entertainment that are like that are dying. And unfortunately...
Okay, so also, I agree with Triple P. I think that it is cool that there is a sort of traveling show aspect to wrestling. I wasn't actually aware of that, but I guess it makes sense. Shows you how big of a wrestling fan I am. Like, that is cool. And it's cool that there is a form of media that allows for that to persist, and they can come to your town and you can buy tickets and you can see a show live. Like, that's and then it's also syndicated, internationally. That is actually kind of cool.
Unfortunately, pro wrestling might also be dying. It's nowhere near as big as it used to be. So I like the promo package to open the show. I thought it was well done. I thought it was sophisticated. I thought it served a point. But I understand the people who are like, well, you can't just say it's fake. But it's 2025.
Right.
You have to live in the real fucking world. People know this shit's fake. There's a million YouTube shows that discuss every aspect of the backstage politics. We have Dave Meltzer, the wrestling list. We have every single aspect of the business has been exposed. Blading to get blood.
Right.
How they do this, how they do that. So we have to adapt with the times and find a way to get people invested and separated from their money without insulting their intelligence. And I think that this was an adequate way of doing that.
And the truth is, I'm I've had two eras of being a wrestling fan. My first era was when I was young, and I actually thought it was real. You know, I was a kid, and you think, oh,
okay, so we're getting another history lesson from the guy
versus Goliath, right? But then when you get older and you realize that it's fake, okay, but then you start to actually respect these guys because not only are they highly trained athletes, but they're also actors. They're basically doing two jobs at once, and they have to balance that perfectly. And you start to respect that level of craft.
So DSP is giving props to professional wrestlers for doing two jobs at once, which is true. I'm not taking away from that, but this is coming from the guy that does not do a single job at once.
And
people don't understand this. Like, people have respect for stuntmen who, they do all sorts of crazy stuff in the movies. You gotta remember, stuntmen have multiple takes. When you're a wrestler, you're live.
That's right.
You have to get it right the first time. And a lot of people don't understand. They're like, oh, this is fake. And they have to be able to do it without hurting themselves. They're on the road 300 days out of the year. They rarely see their family. They're constantly traveling, right? So it's something where for the average person, when they look at it, they go, this is fake, this is gay. But there actually is some incredible stuff to it, right?
Right. By the way, I think we should do some more shout outs because so many contributions are coming in. First
okay, back to shout outs time.
Thank you guys so very much. Just listen to this. We've got Barry Smooth with a gifted sub. Thank you to Barry Smooth for a gifted sub. We've got Whoa Baby with 5 gifted subs. Thank you, Whoa Baby.
Whoa Baby, let's go. Choo choo, sub train. Let's get her going.
And then, ladies and gentlemen, Rare Tricks. 25 subs on Kick. 25 bomb.
Ooh, a 25
amazing
bomb to support the show. Rare Tricks, we fucking love you. That's the $100 I was asking for, or actually more.
That's right.
Let's keep it coming. We can do better than that, guys. Come on. Let's show them that wrestling fans aren't just poor, broke, smelly, 400-pound bums. And that's one of the problems with pro wrestling is they have trouble attracting advertisers that pay the big bucks because the stereotype is that wrestling fans are uneducated, they're ignoramuses, they're dumb. But that's not true. Wrestling fans are really high-quality people, and let's show them that tonight.
Also,
okay.
On the YouTube side of things, we have banned.
So that, like, I think Triple P is talking truth to some extent here. But like the whole, like, it's very funny to me that it's really rare for DSP to get this sort of support on any of the under content he makes, right? Like,
as Ashton mentioned, a lot of people
he's like, usually if he were to get like a 25 member like sub, that would be like the biggest contribution of the day, right? And there very likely wouldn't be very much left like coming in after a bomb like that.
So I saw the very tail end of it or whatever. But I have now, WWE Network or Peacock, or I was on Sportsnet in Canada for a while, and you can go back and you can watch the Attitude Era. And what I've actually found is that it's very similar throughout all of wrestling, is that at the very top of the card, or similar to today at least, to the Attitude Era, at the top of the card, it was amazing. Rock, Austin, Foley, it was amazing. Every time Undertaker, Kane, every time those guys are on screen, it's great. But if you go back and watch, a lot of it was dog shit.
Yes, the filler in between was bad a lot of the times, like shoveling shit to get to the good segments.
These lower card guys, it was bad, man. And it's the same thing today. And that's really what wrestling is I find it to be both the very worst form of entertainment possible and also the very best form of entertainment possible. It's very interesting. You have these moments where if you really get bought in and you're really sucked into the match and into the performance, it's an experience like nothing else. It's so exciting. When it's good, it's so good. But when it's bad,
yeah,
it's so bad.
Especially
so
if you've
bad.
invested so much time to see an outcome, and then the match ends up just being so.
So maybe I'm going too deep here, right? But like I'm not sure there's a ton to take away from PPP's statement. Like the whole, like, if you're invested, the highs are really high, and I think that's true if anything you're invested in. In fact, I think that you could say that's true about the guy, right? Like I think that when it comes to introducing people, like, because everyone has their, like, I tried to introduce someone to the guy story. And I think for most people, they don't immediately see the appeal, right? Because like Triple P just got saying, like, you have to wade through so much dog shit to get to anything worthwhile happening with the guy. But that makes the fruit so much sweeter, right? Like the times when DSP is like in fine form and the trolls are eating good, like it's hard to enjoy unless you have this like the context, right? If you don't have all the history that precedes that to understand like why it's a big deal and like why the trolls are pumping their fists and wiggling their toes, like it's hard to, like, because you can't just show someone like a DSP's like best moments detractor reel and have them like enjoy it, right? I don't think, because they're not acquainted with like the world of the guy, right? And to say like that seems like that's a pretty fair read on wrestling and like just about anything, right? Like I don't think it's fair to be like, if you're 8 seasons deep in a television show because you really like it, and then like there's an the season finale is like so good, but you don't know anyone that's like into it that you can talk to about, you can't just like pull one of your friends aside and be like, hey, I need to talk about what happened in this episode of the show that I love. Can you just watch the season finale so that I can talk to somebody about it, right? Like that doesn't make any sense. And even if your friend did do that, like they're not going to understand like where you're coming from because they don't have all the context of the previous seasons.
So bad. You're like, oh, I waited all this time and watched all this content just to get to this shitty ending,
You know what I mean? So for me as a wrestling fan, I am like just going through shit after shit after, looking for the gold dust, looking for the gold nuggets that are there. And, it used to be worth it. And then for a while, I'm like, it's not worth it, but I want to get back into it again in this Netflix era. And I say, watching that show last night, I was like, it is worth it. It is exciting. It is fun. So,
Sheesh in the kick chat, big fan of Goldust. Absolutely. I think all of those that watch this show or these shows are big fans of the Goldust.
Branding and logos on the mat. What do you think, Phil? You're not a fan?
There was none of that when I was watching, 5 years ago. So for me,
like, so this guy just got another $50 super chat from Papa Slapnuts, and that's not a name I'm familiar with. So I'm willing to believe that this is a true and honest fan here,
as long as it's not
right?
intrusive to the product, I guess I'm okay with it. But it is a shame that every single thing has to go so goddamn commercial at this point. But
Or maybe it's like a Kino pullover. I don't know, but there's no way on any other day of DSP content that if he got at this much money, $254, that someone would just drop him a 50 bone, right? Like that's not happening.
Back to New Japan. New Japan has always had those advertisements on the mat and stuff like that, which assists in the sports-based presentation. So I know a lot of people were complaining to see the Hulk Hogan beer ad on the mat, but you know what? Like, I like that. I like seeing the beer ads on the mat, which I also think is crazy because it's supposed to be a family-centered PG product, but yet here we are shilling beer to children,
right?
Who are watching this shit. It's kind of crazy. I'm not wild about Fortnite being the one in the middle, but it is 2025, and I'm fucking old, and you're old, and that's
Phil hates Fortnite. That must have made him feel so bad.
Feel more sports based,
yeah.
And it's also smart because it's a new source of revenue for the company. So I didn't mind that too much.
Keep it in the ring, keep it on the mat. But I swear to God, if they have a segment where all the wrestlers dress up like Fortnite and start doing fucking dancing,
he hates Fortnite so bad.
I hope they didn't go that far.
Oh, and back in the day, like especially 10 years ago, like 2011, 2012, there was a lot of shitty commercial plugs like that. I remember like
the Subway sandwich segment. Remember that shit? They're all chasing the sandwich in the arena.
Or like when they had to dress up as like KFC, Colonel Sanders, shit like this. So sometimes that just gets too silly and ridiculous. I think I remember they did like a Walking Dead promotion. Maybe I'm wrong about this. But do you remember where, I think it was during the COVID era, they had like a zombie come in and battle like John Morrison and shit. So sometimes that gets too hokey and stuff. I wanted to mention the new Raw logo. What did you think of that, Phil? To me, it reminded.
So I can't really speak to this because, again, not a wrestling fan, but I feel like for people that are like really long-term wrestling fans, like people that have been following wrestling for like decades, right? Like I feel like that's probably part of the draw at this point, is kind of the whole PPP use the term hokey, right? I think that like if you've made it this far on the wrestling ride and like you've accepted that, like that at this point it's probably a source of nostalgia for some people. Not saying that not necessarily disagreeing with the point that PPP is making, but at some point, like we talked about it before, I'm not the only one that the whole like curating your audience and building the audience that you want to have. Like that's, I feel like that's one of those things that is going to like feed into that whole, like, well, if you're doing this, the people that are like, this is a deal breaker for me, they leave. And the people that it's not a deal breaker for, like they stay, right. And that as you go along, like you are selecting for an audience that not only can like tolerate that sort of activity, but actually but at some level, maybe even enjoy it.
Me of this new trend they have where it's to make it too simple and too clean. Like remember the Jaguar scandal they had with the Jaguar logo?
Yes.
I don't really like that new aesthetic they have for the Raw logo. I thought it was too modern in its sensibilities. I wish it was the old logo.
Yeah, you see, I'm running the old logos on my screen right here, and you can see how stylized a lot of them were. And it seems like I just as if
great background, Phil.
Right, they're on Netflix now, so they want to look more modern, more stylized, more generic, and I get why they did it. But yeah, it's called Monday Night Raw, right? Like it's supposed to be uncensored, crazy content, and here's the most milquetoast bland logo you can see.
So inoffensive. It's just so corporate and sanitized. I didn't like that. That's one of the only aspects with the presentation that I didn't like. Start off Triple H in the ring. I have in my notes here, isn't it weird that Triple H is bald? I still can't get used to it. I know he's had his hair cut like this for over a decade, cut short, but I've always hated it, man. Like when he got rid of that long hair, like it's not Triple H anymore.
Yeah,
that it's now Paul Levesque.
What it is we're getting older, and the audience is getting older, and the wrestlers are getting older, and these guys who were from a previous era, we're so used to seeing them in that persona. Undertaker, he should have the hat, and he should have the gothic look. Triple H should have the hair. But these guys are getting older, and I hadn't seen Triple H.
Any segment of Phil's that believes with "I'm getting older," like if that's the starter, I'm immediately skeptical to what he's trying to say. So I have no context on judging the veracity of this take that Phil is trying to like sell to me, and I'm immediately, my heels are dug in. I'm like, this smells already like bullshit, because he uses his age as an excuse to just never do anything like
he's in charge of the company now. And it's crazy to me because it's shocking that he is now in charge, because we always knew that one day he might take over.
Yeah.
It was always a question of the succession. Because when I started watching this, of course, Shane
Yes.
will take over one day, and Shane will run the company with his father. And I always wanted that to be. And for me, it's tough that Shane, did you watch the Vince McMahon Netflix documentary, Phil?
No, I've been totally out of it. I haven't seen it yet. Yeah, maybe I will.
Vince told Shane, if you want this company, you need to stab me. He gave him a knife. He said, stab me and kill me right now.
Wow.
Or you'll never have this company. You'll always be my bitch. And I guess he didn't respect his son, because unlike him, who was willing to steal the company out from under his father, who was willing to take risks, he felt Shane was a pussy. And it's actually like a really sad story of how Shane always wanted to gain his father's respect. He would do all these stunts, fall off of stuff, go through broken glass.
That was insane, the stuff he did back in the day, the plate glass with Angle. Oh my God, man. Nuts.
And he never got it. And then, Stephanie didn't get it either.
Yeah.
And now I've heard rumors that, all of the sexual harassment lawsuit stuff that came up, it was actually Stephanie Triple H's plan to get rid of Vince and steal the company out from underneath him. And that's why Vince then decided to come back and sell the company, to make sure they would never get that inheritance.
Wow. That
they would never get to run the company. And with Triple H, too, you feel it's like nepotism. Like he...
Okay, so I was only like very tangentially aware of all of the drama around Vince McMahon. Before, like I was aware that there was like a lot of sexual scandal that goes on, and how like the things you had to do to make it in the business or whatever, and also just like the kind of scummy like business practices. Like I think it was the friend that I mentioned previously at some point told me like, yeah, if you want to be a professional wrestler, WWE is basically the only game in town, and if you sign up for WWE, like they own your like wrestling persona, they own your wrestling likeness, right? So if you get a start in WWE, you are locked in. Like you cannot leave because you can't take that persona that you built. You can't take that persona that you built at WWE and then go to a competitor and like continue to be that persona. Like he's like, I'm not doing a great job of articulating it, but it sounded like the takeaway was like, basically they own you. So they get you to sign a contract. They own your wrestling future. So you either have to like play ball and do the stuff that's illegal to just to survive and make it in the business that you presumably have been trying to make it in for years, and now finally you have your big shot. And then when you finally get in and you sign away like your rights to this stuff, to your character, whatever, well, then that's when the dark side comes out. And it's like, okay, well, now that we own you, be prepared to lick my boot, right? And so as someone who was a non-wrestling fan, like when being given this information, it very much like I felt vindicated, like as someone who didn't watch the content. I'm like, well, that sounds awful. Like that sounds terrible. Like it was hard for me to square like my friend who was a big wrestling fan, like, okay, well, all this stuff is going on and you know that these people are being, abused and taken advantage of, but you still watch the content. Like that's not something that I was personally like, I would not personally be okay with that.
Married his way into it.
Yeah.
But not so really, because it's new executives, new corporate structure, and they've kept him on. They've kept him on as the guy running everything because he earned it. He, ran NXT for years. He's now been in charge of the main roster for years. Although those who are so attached to Triple H and, worship him and lick his fucking balls and he can do no wrong, realize that one day his ass will be fucking gone. One day he will be scapegoated, and there will be no connection whatsoever to the McMahons. There'll be no connection whatsoever to pro wrestling and the management side of things. They will bring in suits to run everything. So enjoy it or hate on it while it lasts, but I don't think Triple H will last there. Maybe 5 years he'll have.
Yeah.
And then I think his ass will be fired.
During the 2000s, the actual on-screen plot was that, Triple H is marrying Steph, so now he gets all the favor or whatever from the McMahons. And I think at that point, people who were smart and knew the industry were like, well, actually, in real life, one day he might actually get the company too, or at least have a leadership role. But I think what happened at that point, like a lot of people were like, we don't want Triple H to do that because then he might be like power abusive or something. But then what's happened is in the last 10, 15 years, with Vince still in control, with his mitts into everything, people started to realize we do need someone different controlling these matches, controlling the outcomes. We need someone else writing. And when Triple H started doing NXT and stuff like that, and people were comparing directly NXT versus the main product, they're like, this shit is better. So we're happy that Triple H is in control of NXT. We want to see different people in control. And it's refreshing to see someone who kind of understands the fans and not just the old way things used to be, to see that person be in control. But you're right. How long do we have? Wasn't there even just recently a rumor before WWE was actually sold to the UFC company that they were going to be bought out by the Saudis? And if they were bought out by someone like that the whole company structure could change. That would be something that would probably be very shocking. So, and who knows if they would keep him on if something like that were to happen. So I think you're right, but I think we should enjoy it while we have it, right?
Yeah. I mean, now Isaiah here in chat goes, I don't think Triple H will last based on absolutely nothing. WWE is making more money under Triple H than ever. Like what? I think the reason why he will eventually go is because he is married to Stephanie McMahon and that there is that association with Vince.
Yeah.
And as we continue on in this cancel culture, built by association, PR, corporate, sanitized world that we live in, I think that he eventually will go. And I also think that the corporate-minded people at TKO, because remember, this is Ari Emanuel, this is UFC coming in. Right now, they feel like they don't know the business. They need to have one of the boys running it. But eventually, one of those executives, one of those suits will go, why do we have a wrestler running this shit? This guy doesn't have a business degree from Harvard or Yale. This guy doesn't have the credentials. This guy, we need to get somebody in here that actually knows, and then they'll fucking throw us out. That's my reasoning.
We all know that from the history of the gaming industry.
Okay, so I think we're gonna get a street smarts segment here from Phil, but I just wanted to comment on Triple P, like what Triple P had to say, and I think there's some truth to that. Again, as someone who's completely ignorant to the inner workings and outer workings of professional wrestling, like the whole, when you have someone who is like, there's not like a polite way to say this. Like when you have someone who is as power obsessed as like Vince McMahon, right? Like this is you have people who exercise power for the sake of exercising power, right? These are people, someone in one of the chats made a comment about how like he was, effectively like a mob boss. And like there's a lot of truth in that. Like you see these power structures they're headed by someone like that. And a lot of it is like the exercises and cruelty that take place, that the power, like the power demonstrations that take place, is that's how you have to behave when you're resting on a top of cards, right? When you like people of that ilk that make it to the top of a power structure like that, they have to do everything in their power to maintain the status quo, right? So like these are like that is why Vince's, PPP used the term Vince's mitts are in everything. It's because they had to be, right? Like when you're at the top of the power structure like that's built on fear and obedience, like you can't just delegate stuff to people, right? Like you have to be involved. Like there always has to be this fear that Big Brother is watching over you, because as long as everyone is afraid, that keeps you secure, right? Pardon me. Like that's how like dictators work, right? Is compliance through power, right? And so like none of what PPP is saying is surprising to me, but I don't see this like, and I'm not saying he's wrong. Like there's like, he's making a compelling argument for why Triple H's position is limited in the future. Like eventually, like the suits are going to hire a suit to like do his job. Like that's true, right? But I'm not sure it's because of like the woke mind virus or whatever he's claiming. Like it's because like suits are suits, right? Like suits are about making money, and it's a big boys club. Like that's how business, especially big business, works in this country. Is like you want the people who are like suits stick together, right? So like if you don't want someone who can be construed as like a folk hero, right? Like a blue collar guy, like a wrestler that made it to the top of the power structure. You don't want them being in control of anything, because in the event that the business, like they want to have a business, they want to make a business decision to get more money out of the thing at the expense of the quality of the thing. Like if you have someone who's kind of like steeped in that world and has a commitment to the performers, like they run the risk of not acting in quote unquote the best interests of the business, right? And that's why those people don't last long in those circles, right? Like this is the classic, like, think of what happened to, like the whole thing with Red Lobster, the whole thing with Toys R Us. Like it's because the people who like built those businesses, maybe not Red Lobster, but like it's my understanding that Toys R Us started as like a family owned toy store, right? And eventually they got really big, and then they sold out. The family that owned the business decided to get out from it, and so it landed in the hands of some corporate, capital management company, and that's the actions of that capital management company in an attempt to wring as many dollars out of that franchise as they could, eventually caused that franchise to collapse. And that's like really typical, right? And like if you're trying to make money for the people at the top, that's there's oftentimes a lot of money to be had in destroying a successful brand rather than continuing to build it and continuing to ensure it's successful. Because like, let's face it, suits are more interested in short-term gains than long-term gains, right? And so that's why they're willing to. Who was the gaming executive guy who, what was it? I think it was the people that made Diablo, right? Like Diablo was a like hugely successful franchise, made money hand over fist, right? And then eventually they got like the guy who was in charge of that, he like retired or left or whatever, and they put in some new guy in it. And then we got Diablo, the mobile game, out, right? And at one point they were someone asked him about his business strategy, and he said, we are making brand withdrawals. And what he meant by that was that over the past decade or two or three, like the brand of Diablo had spent all this time investing in its brand and like building trust with its consumer base. And now this new guy comes in, and instead of seeing this as like, oh, well, this is why people love us and we should continue to do this, he goes, well, we can abuse that goodwill that we have built with our customer base over the past 20 years to make more money from our customers, right? At the expense of our long-term outlook, right? Like that is how these guys operate. And that is why the people that come up, through the ranks and start as, start as like the workers in the trenches, that is why they do not last long in these, leadership positions, is because they're typically not willing to knock the legs out from underneath a system that they love and they want to see continue to grow and prosper for the sake of long-term or for the sake of short-term profits.
Recently, that totally makes sense because all the suits that are running the AAA game companies, and then every game that comes out is a woke piece of garbage that no one wants to buy anymore. We definitely need the suits in charge, not people who actually understand the industry, right? It's the stupidest reasoning.
He's so dumb, right? Like Phil is now blaming the woke mind virus. It's probably because his boy Triple P is here. He's now blaming the woke mind virus for the decline of the gaming industry, which is like, factually, I believe is not true, right? Like if you want to see why games suck, like you look no further than our friend Darkside Phil, right? Because if you recall, he is the yellow paint boy. He is the reason why games are the way they are, is because this guy is so stupid. He has been used as a case study for how you get players to understand what they're supposed to do in games, right? He is the lowest common denominator. Like at some point, a game dev was like, you know what? If there's anyone dumber than this guy that's trying to play our game, they're just going to have to like watch a guide, because that's a bridge too far to try to accommodate those people lack of like awareness and gaming ability, right? And also it's really funny because up until, I don't know, 12 months ago, this guy had a proud ally slide in his pre-stream slideshow, and it has been conspicuously gone since the whole Kino arc began, right? So Mr. woke sellout over here, like Mr. blaming the woke mind virus and causing the games industry to sell out and therefore be bad, did the exact same thing.
They don't need someone in the know. I always think have someone who has their fingers on the pulse of the fans.
Oh, street smarts. Give us street smarts.
We're going to make you profitable. Why do you have to disassociate from that? I just don't get that.
I agree. Okay, I know we're going off on tangents. We got to start Pyro to open the show. Hallelujah! For a long time, Pyro was nowhere to be seen.
Oh, really?
I
didn't know that.
For a long time, they didn't do Pyro to open the shows. I don't know why, whether it was an insurance liability or for what, but it was cool for me to see that Pyro was back and that they used Pyro a lot throughout the show. It just always made it feel more of a spectacle.
Right, like you're
bigger.
at a pay-per-view or at WrestleMania.
Okay, I'm probably dented, but it took me a second to realize he was talking about pyrotechnics.
WWE. Well, I don't know if you're aware, but Rock just purchased millions of dollars of more shares in TKO Holdings. So he is a part owner of WWE. He's on the board. He is actually like Triple H's boss. Like he actually is the final boss. He really is the guy over there right now. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. Speaking of which, Rock comes out, and I gotta say, I was marking out. When Rock taps his arm and he says the goosebumps, I was feeling... Okay,
so I'm already pausing way too much, and I'm never going to get through this, but I think that just to carry on a point about the whole suits versus blue collar guys, like this could be like at The Rock is one of those guys that is in hugely successful. Like the guy is super wealthy, right? And everyone knows he got to start in WWE, and it strikes me as like particularly likely that like him getting invested to the level that he is in the WWE holding company is one of those moves that you make as someone who like legitimately cares about the business to try to prevent this slide towards like short-term profits over everything at the expense of the thing itself, right? Like, and I like, it's kind of weird to me that like they're not willing to comment on this.
Goosebumps for Rock to come out. What were you thinking when Rock came out, Phil? Did you have that nostalgic feeling of getting to see The Rock?
Well, it was interesting. I don't know what music Rock has used to come out in recently because I haven't been watching, but it's like he comes out and it's like his classic theme, but then they go into the new theme that's like the slower theme, almost like a villain. You know, I liked that. It's like showing this is old Rock, but now it's a new Rock, and he comes out and does his thing. And I like seeing him, but again, like when I saw Triple H, I'm like, oh, he definitely looks older. Like to me, because I haven't been following for 5 years, and I look at him, he's like, he looks a little skinnier. You know, he's got the stubble, it's got some gray in there. And like, well, if you haven't been watching for a while, you'd probably be shocked that this is how he looks. But he still got it. You're right. He still got his charisma. He still got that ring presence.
Yeah.
He still got some cheeseball stuff too, because some of the lines they gave him about kissing Netflix's butt and everything. You know.
Yeah.
Kinda...
So let's talk. So Rock comes out. Wow, it's The Rock, and you got to give The Rock his props for this. When Rock comes out, he slows it right down. And this is one thing that I, as a performer, wish that I was able to do more. I'm still guilty of going too fast. Rock slows it right down. He takes full control. He demands your attention. He captivates the audience. He allows his charisma to take over, his showmanship to come over. So even though what Rock is saying is like goofy and bullshit, it's the way that he delivers it that makes it so special. However, that being said, Rock's promo kind of felt like DSP's pre-stream, where it's like a business meeting. It was like Rock was running a business meeting with the Netflix executives and touching on all these different points. I thought it was good of him, you know, and he's pointing out certain performers to highlight to the Netflix executives. He highlighted Cody Rhodes. Right. You know, said this guy has put the company on his back for a year. I think that was a very solid thing of Rock to say. And it was a good way to highlight Cody, the face of the company, to start the Netflix era, even though he didn't have a match on the show or a segment on the show. And it kind of allowed to maybe foreshadow, is Rock going to battle with Cody at WrestleMania or what? He also, of course, shouted out his family member, Roman Reigns, who is the big star of the company in this era. He accomplished everything he needed to do during this promo. Again, as I said earlier, he was able to say bullshit, and it wasn't censored.
Right, didn't censor
it wasn't
at all.
on a tape delay. You know, and it made it feel like wrestling was a big deal. But it was like a business meeting where he goes, this is the highest grossing arena show in WWE history, which is crazy. When you think of all the shows that they've had over the years, they were able to charge outrageous ticket prices for this show. So many celebrities. So
Internet Tough Guy Real in the Kick Chat is responding to someone that said that how doing a podcast with another person is like the way to go. It makes more sense. And they just say, yeah, just find someone to do 90% of the show. Absolutely well said.
His star kind of
Toasty Chestnuts Real. Phil could do a podcast on DSP Throwcap recapping this podcast. Absolutely.
Just totally flopped. So it's not what it used to be, but it was smart for them to start the show with The Rock. And it felt cool. Then we had Roman Reigns come out.
I don't really have anything to say about Triple P talking about The Rock. I mean, he's The Rock. He's going to do what he has to do.
Yeah. First of all, when they come out, this production value is wild. Like, and this is Monday Night Raw. Again, this is not WrestleMania. And to see them coming out, this insanely huge LED screen that they have at this arena, the pyro that they've got for these guys coming out now, it just feels like a giant match feel for a match that I don't know the history of. So I'm just trying to like get caught up really fast. To be honest, I loved this match. And the reason that I think I really loved the match was because if you haven't actually been watching wrestling for a while,
that dig that PPP had on Phil about how The Rock's promo sounded like a DSP pre-stream, I think I was hoping for a lot more comments of that flavor, and just given that we've made it this far into the podcast and haven't got there yet, and I'm looking at the timestamps on RawPhil, and oh my, like, this is definitely like a 2.5 hour podcast. Like, so we started about an hour in.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
Tongaloa?
So 5:15, and we are now
But yeah,
three
for
and a
me,
half,
this is a
like
quintessential-
what's that break out to?
Raw match.
So
You've got-
I'm awful at mental math, and I'm not gonna pretend that I'm not. I said it before, and I'm not even gonna attempt this because it is too late in the day, and I'm currently drinking a Guinness.
Ending because these guys were getting interfered. There was no screw job. It was just a really solid match to open the show, and it was the culmination of an important plot line, so it had a meaning as well. It wasn't just like a throwaway match.
Now, I have some nitpicks. First of all, these guys' physiques are still fucking soft as fuck. I don't know what it is. Samoans can't get abs. I don't know what it is. These Samoans, they're just fat. Like, they just can't get shredded.
I've always
Romans
wondered, is that just part of their culture? Like, is that part of their culture that they don't want that? You know, kind of like almost like a sumo wrestler would never want to be ripped. So maybe that's just part of the thing, is that they see that as
I feel like this is a super dented take from DSP.
push people around.
The other thing, they can't control it, but the other nitpicky thing for me is in previous tribal warfare matches, they've had the family at ringside, like they've had like the grandfathers and the cousins, and they're all.
My urge to speed this up past 1 1/4 is very high right now. I'm exercising some constraint.
The whole point is that nobody from the family is supposed to interfere.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't like that there was so much interference in the match. And in fact, I thought that the finish was overbooked. But I wasn't thinking from the perspective, you know, that you have, where it's, you know, if this is your first time tuning in a long time or ever, getting to see all of these people come in, it is fun. It is exciting to have them, you know, come into the ring and interfere. And there was a lot of that back in the Attitude Era and stuff like that. But from a traditional perspective, I would have liked to see Roman win completely clean, 1, 2, 3, no interference. I didn't mind like the initial interference, and then Sammy and the other Jimmy coming out and saving him. But then you had Kevin come out to interfere,
right.
You know, and then Cody's then come out, interfere, and it's just like I felt like it was a bit too much interference.
A lot of overbooking, but again, that's almost representative.
So I'm reading the YouTube chat, and apparently Logan Paul is somehow involved in WWE. That's a real thing. Color me surprised. Like, I did not know that, and I feel like my life was better like not knowing that. So I think I'm making like good life decisions.
Exactly. One of the problems with this match I had, which you wouldn't have had, is that I just don't buy into Solo Sikoa. I never viewed him as a legitimate threat to Roman Reigns. I felt like he was never built up to be Roman Reigns. He was always booked to lose, to be second best, and he just doesn't have the charisma. Now, I know a lot of people have felt in recent months like Solo turned it around and finally established himself, but I never felt it was that way. Okay. And also, the Tongans, the one Tongan is way too fucking thin. They both have to wear fucking t-shirts because their physiques are fucked. You know it's bad. When a wrestler has to wear a t-shirt, you know shit's scuffed. You know shit's fucked. And then the other Tongan is way out of shape. So those guys, I don't think, are ready for prime time, not ready to be part of the main events.
Internet Tough Guy Real responded to the question in Kick Chat, who's the guy on the left? That's Boogie's little brother.
So much. He's so expressive with just his eyes. He doesn't have to flail around. He doesn't have to be so theatrical. He's able to communicate so much with just his eyes alone, with just his facial expressions alone. It adds so much to the match. It adds so much to each fall, each moment in the storytelling. Paul Heyman, in my opinion, is like an MVP of WWE and has been for years with this bloodline story.
So Triple P's going off about how the wrestler physiques weren't up to his expectations or whatever, and this isn't a comment about physique and all that stuff, but I think that's one of the things that sets the UFC and boxing and stuff, MMA, that's what's one of the things that really sets it apart from professional wrestling, right?
But also Roman's manager, and they were feuding, and
if you're, because it's real, right? Your body is your body when you're participating in those competitions, right? And so you know, obviously they have weight classes and whatever, but it's like that's the presentation, the physical presentation is like not the goal, it's the performance, right? And like that level of realness is not something that WWE will be ever able to achieve because of the niche that it falls in, right? And so like I think Triple P's like comment here is really telling of that he wanted like more I don't know what the right way to put it is. He wanted like more impressive physiques from some of the wrestlers that were present on this show, and it's like that's just not a concern when it comes to watching like actual fighting, right? And like again, this isn't a knock on WWE, but it's just a reality of the difference between like the two different worlds that these two things inhabit, right? And it's like I think that it's really easy to be like, well, if that's a concern of yours of like the physical appearance of the people that are participating, like it kind of it trivializes it a little bit, right? Hopefully that makes sense.
The biggest star in the company, Roman Reigns. The match had stakes. The match had consequences. It's important going forward in the future. And then we had The Rock come out again.
Yes.
We had the showdown between The Rock and Roman Reigns. This was giving big time, like alpha, masculine energy. It reminded me of in Predator, you know, when Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers, their hands come together and they do that handshake.
Yes.
That's what it was. They had that stare off, lots of masculine alpha energy there. And it got excited for, is that going to be the match at WrestleMania to determine who the real tribal chief is in the family between The Rock and Roman Reigns? Or will they go in a different direction? I thought that was cool to see. Rock coronated him, put the
like a passing of the torch, pretty
him.
Much. Yeah.
Yes. So I like that. Then we get the news. Royal Rumble going to be in Saudi Arabia
next
in 2026.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of the Saudi shows, Phil?
I saw some of the early ones. Right before COVID, I think they had one or two. And they always looked like WrestleMania quality when you were over there. The production was always crazy. But to be honest, like I never really cared about the outcomes of those matches because they always felt like
Dragon Cat in the kick chat at Dick Jones. It's basically so we can watch men with no shirts on without being called gay. Thin ice, dude. Thin ice.
But then it would be like, oh, there was a bullshit ending because it was in Saudi Arabia. The real match will be in a month at the next pay-per-view, And I'm like, well, so I didn't really care about them that much.
In a way, it kind of feels like a big house show. What was good about them, they would get like the old stars in and stuff like that.
Right.
People, but the Saudis didn't even know, like they would request certain wrestlers who were dead and stuff like that.
Oh no.
To wrestle and stuff like this. The problem for me with the Saudi
so
shows, though, is just the crowd isn't really into it.
I can't help but like I've kind of tuned out, right? And probably you have too if you happen to be watching this. But I'm looking at the presentation here of the Smart Guys stream, right? And so we got the two webcams, right? Just kind of like plopped right smack dab in the middle of the screen, and like they don't fill this negative space, like between the right hand and left hand borders, and they don't meet in the middle. And like there's something about it that just says that seems wrong to me, right? Like this would look so much better if they had some kind of border, some containment around it. Like even if it was just like a big oblong in the background that pulled them in, or if they were expanded to fill like this entire horizontal space, like that would look so much better in my opinion. And I don't know who's responsible for what the smart guys background that we're currently enjoying, but like that certainly isn't adding to it, right? Like this is definitely like top tier DSP viewer experience.
It should not be something that happens every week, every show. It should not be the basis of the show. Otherwise, it starts to get up its own ass and become really pretentious and stupid and silly, I feel. So I get what you're saying, and I think fans are going to be really divided about that intro. But again, if this is just WWE does it in a smarter way where they're more sparing with that sort of stuff.
Right.
So I wouldn't expect to hear shoot and work and heel and face on a regular basis on the shows. That's just not really how WWE does business, and I trust them to be restrained with that.
That was the best place to do it. The reboot on Netflix was the time to do it and get it out of the way, address it, and as long as they don't keep doing it every week, I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think it was the right time. So
again, part of people look at like the CM Punk pipe bomb promo and how great it was, and that storyline. I remember it was so amazing at that time.
Oh, yeah.
But it was so amazing at that time because nobody else was allowed to do it, and it never happened before, you know. And it was like, wow, this is crazy. That but once it becomes normal and routine,
it's boring.
Once it's boring. Everybody gets tired of it, and then it just makes the whole thing feel stupid.
Right.
So you have to be very sparing with that sort of stuff.
Right.
We got. Go ahead. Yeah, shout him out. Shout him out.
Casanova, 22 months as a member on the Reacts channel. Thank you, Casanova. And then we got a very generous $50 super chat from Papa Slapnuts, who says, Triple H big leaguing Cody Rhodes by introducing him in the crowd instead of getting his own entrance was actually pretty keno.
It is Keno. Well, you got to remember, and I'm surprised that they didn't just job Cody out as soon as he came back and put him through humiliation rituals and make him Stardust, because that's what I would have done if I was Triple H. Because Cody, if you don't know this, but when Cody went to AEW, on his first appearance, he smashed Triple H's throne with a sledgehammer.
I saw that on social media.
And then he pulled out the golden shovel at certain points, and all of these references and all of these pointed things to Triple H and, you know, shitting on WWE. But, you know, they saw potential in Cody. They decided to push him and make him a star. And, you know, with a lot of the audience, it's going over really well and people really like him. Just my criticism of Cody is that he just doesn't feel larger than life. It feels like he's trying to be larger than life, but he's not really. And I think that people were more in love with the idea of Cody being champion than Cody actually being champion. I feel like Cody's title reign has not been that memorable. It's not been that amazing. Again, I checked out because of Cody's title run and how boring I thought it was. So Cody to me is just, he's not an icon. He's not The Rock. He's not Cena. As much as I hate Cena, Cena's still an icon. Cena's still big.
See, this is something I have trouble kind of dealing with as someone who's outside of the wrestling,
right, like they
world, right? Like
the face of WWE. And, you know, remember,
like you go into it and you know that it's like all drama, right? Like it's all fake or whatever, right? And so it's hard for me to understand like where because you have all these different shows and presumably like the fact that like non-WWE, you know, professional wrestling things like organizations like exist, like presumably there's no bumping off of those IPs, right? Like you're not going to talk about something that happened on a competitor pro wrestling show like on your show, right?
You know, give my opinion at a
and so and it's like understanding that like the drama that happens, right? So PPP was just talking about how some wrestlers like smashed like Triple H's throne or whatever, and how like he was expecting that to cause like a bigger splash like when they brought him back or whatever. It's really hard for me as a non-fan to understand like why I would care about that. And like it's like, well, we all go into this with a nod and the wink that like none of this matters, right? So it's like, well, like are we really like anticipating there being bad blood over like the character like doing the character's thing on what is something of like a different show, right? Like presumably the two shows that this particular wrestler had been on are both under the WWE umbrella, right? But it's like if those things are like kind of isolated from each other and they're kind of like on their own separate rails, so to speak, like why are we like retroactively like worried about how things are like when those storylines like reconverge, like why are we worried about people like being like acting like up in arms about these things that have happened? I legitimately don't understand, and maybe it's because maybe I'm the idiot. Like I just don't get it.
Well, my perspective,
and I think it kind of ties into what I said before about how like if you don't have the context around the thing to understand like why the highs are high and why and why it makes the highs make the lows like worth going through, I don't know.
You know, it seemed like whenever he came back, he was stealing the spotlight from someone else rather than kind of like trying to give them the rub. But now it seems like that's changed. You know, the crowd was really into it. They were like, oh, this
Kick
is
chat posting the Popcat emote over and over again, and then some. Yeah, the internet tough guy reel is putting in the nodders emote in between. It's very funny. I have a smile on my face.
Something like that, champion.
It would be the 17th time. So he's tied 16 times with Ric Flair. Now, of course, Ric Flair has actually won more than 16 world titles. Depends which promotions you count as world titles and not. However, Ric Flair was only the champion in WWF or E twice. So really, Cena is the WWE most championship reigns guy already.
Right.
I really don't want to see him get the 17th title run.
Yeah.
I really, really hate Cena even still. I'll talk about this promo. To me, it was basically like a poor man's version of the Rock promo to start. It's like the Rock, but at a lesser level.
All right, I'm kind of struggling here. How much more of this we got left to do here?
Netflix's Pinos. He talks about how it's his last time in Los Angeles, which really they're not going to book LA at all in the next year.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're approximately an hour into the show. Presumably, we have a whole nother hour to go. My goodness.
He won his first championship at WrestleMania 21.
Okay, so here's the dented slideshow.
Cena talks about how it's been 2,400 days or more. It was more than 2,400 days since his last win.
Right.
And that's true. That's true.
Yep. So we got about an hour still. I guess it's time to lock in.
The matches that he's had. And in fact, it seems to me now that a win over Cena doesn't even mean anything. You know, they had Solo Sikoa go.
Whoa. Okay, so DSP just muted his mic to cough. Like,
matches were starting to
this is wild that wow, DSP, can you please do that more? Like, please.
WrestleMania 34 story. Remember? And then he ended up having that cheap match with The Undertaker that satisfied nobody.
Yeah, terrible.
Like this guy loves to go on like rants about how like it's so hard for him to mute his mic when he has to cough or clear his throat. I think that's the exact words that he uses. Like, okay, so you just want me to mute my mic whenever I have to cough or clear my throat. It's just dumb kids. It's just dumb kids. Like this is an admission that he understands that is a bad thing to do, and it detracts from the legitimately makes the content worse, and he's willing to do it when there's someone else in the room with him that can like call him on his bullshit, right? Like, you can imagine that if Phil started like burping, coughing, snorting into the mic, that Triple P would just be like, Phil, what the fuck are you doing? Right? And then Phil would have to answer that. But we know this guy has like no ability to actually confront people IRL, right? Like, and not even IRL, just like when someone has the ability to speak to him, right? Like talking on the phone, not even in the same room as him, like he capitulates so easy. Mr. Internet tough guy over here, like classic Phil behavior, let me tell you.
Doom and all the bullshit. When he got into the plot line with CM Punk, he actually started to get a little bit better in the ring. I feel like they forced him to do that to make him more credible. But at this point, like, I just don't care about John Cena. I never did. I never will. So to see him come back here, it's my final year, I literally don't care. I never will. So I'm sure they're going to make a big to-do about this year. I'm just going to be like, can I skip these segments? You know, I just don't care about this guy.
The way I look at it is that Cena presided over the slow demise and death of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
John Cena drove so many fans away. So many fans that, you know, were from the Attitude Era, you know, Ruthless Aggression era. And Cena's presentation when he was the rapper and early on, he was still somewhat of an edgy character. He was still somewhat interesting. When they did that 2008 was so bad.
Okay, so I don't care about John Cena, but I will say that, like, at one point in my life, I was involved in like a childcare gig, right? Like, I took care of people's kids for extended periods of time, right? And during the time that I did that, like, I had a lot of kids to take care of, like, you know, over the entire time that I spent like doing that job, right? And like, one of the kids that sticks with me is there was a kid who was really big into pro wrestling, and he was like a little kid, so like I don't like hold this against him or whatever, but he was like John Cena's biggest fan. He loved John Cena. He'd do like the "you can't see me" thing where you hold your elbow and then wave your hand in front of your face. Like he would do that. And of all of the kids that I ever had to care for, he was probably the most insufferable, right? And like I say that in the kindest way possible. Like again, he was just a little kid, and like looking back on it, it kind of made me laugh. But in the moment, like having to deal with this kid who like just loved wrestling to that level and was such a huge John Cena fan, I just like, man, can we not do this right now? It took so much additional like emotional effort to like, you know, go to that kid's level and like engage with him in a way that was like productive and like corrected that behavior without like, you know,
and there were so many guys
going over the top and, you know, like yelling at the kid or whatever. Cause like, I don't really believe in yelling at kids. Like that's not really my bag, but like it was tough. Let me tell you.
Led to the dark days of the pandemic where there were no new stars that anybody had connected with.
Right.
And when you stop caring, when there's no longer characters that you have investment in, because all of the old wrestlers that you cared about retired or went part-time, and so they didn't invest in the new stars at all.
In my opinion, the biggest mistake WWE made during that entire era, they refused to turn Cena heel. If they had at some point turned him heel, now you can build up new faces to face Cena. And even if they don't beat him, at least you have some more credible faces. Instead, you left him as the poster boy face of the company for so long. There was no one else.
People begged and begged, pleaded for Cena to turn heel, and they dick teased everybody. For you remember the Rise Above Hate back in 20? Is he going to turn heel against The Rock? And they could have done something there after, and it looked like that was the story, because after Cena lost to The Rock,
so I don't have much to say on this whole thing, so I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent here. But there was like I'm big into film, right? Like I really enjoy films, and one of the things, like, so there's some creators on YouTube that I follow, and I would like, you know, shout them out and put a link in the description, but I just don't remember who said it and in what video they said it in. But the premise of the video was like the demise of the movie star, right? And like this whole thing that PPP and Phil are discussing right now, the fact that like you have to build up these, you know, these personalities so that when they participate in the drama of the show, like the audience actually cares about what's happening to them and with them and about them. Like to some extent, like that's also true about like a movie star, right? And I don't think you can really get away with that in WWE, right? Because WWE is all about the personality of the characters that you're portraying, right? But the YouTube video in which I was watching, the guy made the argument that like that one of the reasons why like mid-size or mid-budget Hollywood movies have been dead for like years is because film companies, like film producers, don't want to invest in making movie actors movie stars, right? So like if you think back like into like the 80s and 90s and whatever, like there were films that if there was a movie star in it, that made you go watch the film, right? Even if it was low budget. Like one of the examples they give in the film was like there's a film where Patrick Swayze plays like a transgender woman, right? And Patrick Swayze at the time was like a huge movie star, and Patrick Swayze always played these like manly man characters. Think Roadhouse, right? Like he kicked ass. Everyone loved and respected Patrick Swayze's character. Like those are the characters he played, were macho men, right? And allegedly Patrick Swayze like begged and pleaded to get this role to play this transgender woman, right? And so then this mid to low budget, you know, Hollywood movie comes out starring Patrick Swayze, and you have all these people that go to watch the movie knowing that it is not like the typical Patrick Swayze like fare. They still go watch the movie because Patrick Swayze is in it, right? And like I, you know, for a time at least was like a big Harrison Ford fan. Like any film that had Harrison Ford in it, I was absolutely willing to watch because I genuinely liked Harrison Ford as an actor, right? And because Hollywood isn't willing to prop actors up to the level of star, there's this huge dearth in these mid-size Hollywood movies because the movies don't sell on their own, right? And the argument the guy was making in his video was that like movies don't want to have to pay movie stars, right? Sorry, I had to clear my throat. So, and I paused on it just out of habit, right? And because I do not want to be here for longer than like an hour and a half. So the guy was making the argument that because movie studios, they don't want to pay like movie star salaries, right? And two, like when it comes to like the rise of the franchise film, like think your Marvel movies, right? Like if you have a actor that is the face of your character, think like what's his name, Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, right? Like Robert Downey Jr. is like at least at the time like one of the last remaining movie stars, right? Like everyone knows who Robert Downey Jr. is, and like he has the chops to back it up, right? But like if you're Marvel or whoever and you want to make another Iron Man film, right? And Robert Downey Jr. is just not willing to like be Iron Man again, that's a huge hit to your box office sales, right? Because he's a movie star and his star power draws people in. Like I remember when Iron Man 1 came out, my dad was one of those people who was like, I don't give a shit about comics. I think they're stupid and lame, but I'm a huge fan of Robert Downey Jr. I will watch any movie that he plays a character in, right? Like my dad was one of those people that bought a ticket to watch the first Iron Man only because Robert Downey Jr. was in it, and only because Robert Downey Jr. was in it. So that phenomenon has gone away, right? But like the suits at like the movie production places, like they don't want to be tied to like a particular individual, right? Like they want anyone to be able to play Iron Man and still get the same amount of money from like their audience. And that's kind of backfired on the movie production studios, right? It was a super interesting video. I wish I could remember what it was called so that I could link it in the chat, because like if anyone ever makes it this far in the video, I want you to be able to find it and watch it because it's incredibly interesting.
He has incredible athleticism. He looks like a wrestler. He sounds like a wrestler. He's a good promo. He can get good heel heat. He takes this shit. You can tell he's taking it seriously. And I don't know. I'd like to see him get that scene.
Okay, I had to pause. Okay, I'm back.
A match.
Maybe, I've been talking about this, in the last year or so. Sometimes what you have to do is you have to separate the art from the artist. I don't like Logan Paul as a person from all the stuff that I've heard he's involved with, but maybe he's a good wrestler. I haven't seen him yet, but I'm
all right. You're gonna hear some of those Windows peripheral disconnected sounds.
I think a lot of people sadly can't disassociate, and that's why a lot of people hate on him being in
well,
WWE.
And that's we'll get into the Hogan stuff later as well. Then we had Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley. What did you think of this one, Phil?
Well, this one was weird for me because last time that I was watching, Dominic Mysterio was still just being introduced to everyone as the son of Rey Mysterio, and he was supposed to be like this face. He was getting beat up by Brock Lesnar, I remember, and all of that. I know about Judgment Day, but I haven't followed the plot of what's happened with Judgment Day. So now to see Judgment Day be like a whole different group of people are in there now, and Liv was the champion. I don't even remember. I didn't know she was the champion. I didn't remember her ever winning the title. So the whole thing was just shocking to me. Like I'm just absorbing as much as I possibly can. But then the thing that seemed to staple was like Rhea Ripley. Seems like she's the same character as from like before, like when I was watching. It doesn't seem like anything's changed with her. So
this is the thing about this is that I wasn't really excited about this feud because I think it's kind of lost its luster. But before I get into that, I'll kind of explain to you what happened.
Okay.
So basically, Dominic, they were trying to present him as a babyface. It wasn't really going over well. But then what they had him do is they paired him with Rhea Ripley. And they made Rhea Ripley like some sort of like BDSM dominatrix that he called Mommy. And it was like the most disgusting, greasy, sniveling guy now, where, this woman runs his show, and, he turned on his father, Ray, and he went to the house on Christmas Day and assaulted Ray and like ruined Thanksgiving. They did a lot of good stuff with this. And Rhea and Dominic really developed a lot of chemistry, and they were able to do a lot with Judgment Day. It was one of their best stories. And then they split them up. So they did a storyline where Liv Morgan stole Dominic from Rhea because Liv called Dom Daddy Dom, if you get where they're going with this. So now he's like allowed to be the man or whatever, and she's like submissive to him. She was making chicken tenders and stuff like this for him.
So are we sure Vince didn't write this plot line? Are we sure he wasn't involved? You know what I mean?
Because this is like some weird like sex fetish shit that they're putting on the show. At least it's not another cuckold storyline. You remember Lashley and Rusev? How many times they would cuck Rusev? And like, and you thought that was all like Vince's idea to have Lashley cuckold him?
Wow.
But then Rusev goes to AEW and he does a cuckold storyline there.
Yeah.
He did it again.
Right.
I swear to God, 3 different times they made this guy a cuckold. It's like, at a certain point, is it you that wants this or what's going on? But this is one of their more risque or cutting edge. Notice like there was like a real homoerotic moment, like a lesbianic moment. In
this is getting kind of tough to watch. Not gonna lie.
A little bit. It seems like a lot of
she's like holding her, and it looks like she's about to kiss her before she delivers the finisher.
Yeah. The weird thing about it was, like, I'd never seen Liv wrestle at that level because Liv wasn't getting a lot of attention 5-6 years ago. She was just like relatively new.
Ooh boy, this is turning into a slog.
Like the same moves, the same riptide, the same setups. So it was kind of like I one half of the match I totally already knew because I'd seen her in NXT and everything, and then coming onto the main show, and the other half was like totally different. I don't know how credible a match like this is.
Oh my god, it just never ends.
The size of Rhea, and it's like, how could you say that she's gonna even stand a chance against her if it was a fair match? You know what I mean? Like,
well, Phil, which did you find sexier? Are you more into Rhea or are you more into Liv, Phil?
Gee, should I delve into that?
I'm married, stupid.
Think that way when I watch these matches anymore. This is the Attitude Era with freaking
Super Bonchon in the kick chat. He's married. Yep.
Tight, the tone, sexy ass there on Rhea Ripley. But Liv's tits are like they're a bit lacking. Did you notice that? Liv seems to be like, you know, she needs to put on a cup size or something.
Okay, so we're getting like another physique critique from Triple P here.
Like that was a prerequisite to be a diva or one of the wrestlers, is you had to have big boobs and a big ass. It's just you wanted to or the other.
Look how he really didn't want to say the word boobs. They have to have big boobs. Like, can you be a little more transparent, Phil, please?
And now it's completely flipped. It's a different era, you know, it's a different generation.
We're supposed to take women wrestling seriously. Let's be real. They're eye candy. They're sex objects. Phil's so uncomfortable. Phil, come on. Phil. What do you think of the tattoo on Rhea?
PPP's really trying to get some action here out of this, and I'm not seeing it.
Training and all of that versus
like that's the problem with Phil, is like he just kind of like refuses to engage. Like here's a topic that Phil isn't super comfortable talking about, right? And like he just doesn't want to engage with it, not even for the sake of the content, right? And that's just because like Phil kind of sucks.
I think you get too crazy with it, you know. And I do feel like, you know, to the point where she's going a little too far, and I don't really care for them. So
yeah, she was a cutie before all those tattoos. Although she's still fit. What a woman, as Vince would say there. What would you? Okay. And then we had the finish. Rhea won. They teased Rhea and Dominic reuniting, and then Rhea kicked him in the nuts.
Right.
Hopefully the storyline is over. I felt like it extended on way too
MRI Gamer in the YouTube chat. Phil's sleeping on the couch tonight after this conversation.
That
well said.
She was before.
Yeah.
I feel like she really needed Dominic, and Dominic at the time when they were together, she was getting all the credit, or I felt like most of the credit for that working. But now we see, I think, that it was Dominic who was the real MVP of getting the heat on that storyline.
Yeah.
And I feel like she's kind of just spinning her tires. They gave her the title. And I think what's going to happen is they're going to have her feud with Charlotte Flair again, because Charlotte's coming back soon. And she's probably going to lose to Charlotte. And then I really don't know what the fuck they're going to do with Rhea Ripley. Liv stole her boyfriend, stole her thunder. Rhea has the title, but the title doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
I think that Liv and Dominic.
Okay, so I know I said that I wasn't going to speed this up, but man, it is tempting knowing that we still have like an hour to go.
Right, Phil? Where Rhea comes and then the Undertaker's gong hits.
Like what?
And it's
the badass Undertaker coming out. And by the way, they played his American Badass theme, which I was shocked that they used the Kid Rock American Badass theme when he came out. And I think everyone was shocked by this. They're like, so what is this? Is this like The Undertaker is passing the torch to Rhea Ripley.
Hey, RV in the YouTube chat. DSP has no clue how to interject. He just keeps saying, yeah. Well said, Hey RV. And I think Hey RV is like a known detractor, right? Like I see Hey RV's videos recommended to me and on YouTube. Pretty sure this is actually the the person in the flesh here.
It's like, is this really necessary?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that's the YouTube the YouTube icon that they use. So
really add to the show. Other than that, he was on it.
Nice to have you here, Hey RV.
Because, like, what is Rhea's character? At first, she kind of looked like she was a biker chick, right? But then they changed it. She's a dominatrix. She's got makeup that she looks goth now. But now Undertaker comes out. Oh, he's a biker. He's giving her the push or the rub. But it's like, but does that even match the character? I don't know. I'm confused. I hadn't seen Rhea for 5 years. I come back and I'm like, what's happened? I wouldn't have even known any of the stuff you just said at all by watching that match. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like there was a hit the reset button on her, and now it's just so confusion that he's associated with her, and it just seemed like a wasted opportunity. He could have done something better on the show.
What would you have give this match out of 5 stars, Phil?
It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. At least it had a definitive ending. There was a title change that
I really don't care about any of this. I wish I had something to say. It's tough over here.
I thought it was average, just a plain match. Didn't really get into it. I kind of believed that Rhea was going to win the whole time. I did like one thing I wrote down that I forgot to mention. I did like the statistics they showed when she came out, that Rhea had only lost twice since 2022, and both of the matches were to Liv Morgan. I thought that was kind of...
So I will say that I was obviously way too excited to do this, right? So I got home and I like, messed around outside a little bit, and then I came inside and like immediately sat down and started doing this. And like, I got a bag of chips sitting in the cupboard right now that are really calling my name, let me tell you. Like, eating a bag of chips sounds so much better than doing what I'm doing now. But we are locked in. We're locked in. We're gonna try to make it.
Really seem to like him as the authority figure. I think he's okay. So apparently there's going to be a match next week between Chad Gable and whoever.
Mystery Lucha.
Internet tough guy real in the kick chat. Shout out, Hey RV, you're in the wrong chat. That's for all the losers. Well said, Internet tough guy real. Like, I wish I did this enough that I could have like a LARPers to watch leaderboard, because we get some spicy messages in both chats lately, especially like, because it used to be only the kick chat, but Phil is very much locked into doing the show with Triple P. So like there's obviously more dirty trolls and detractors in the YouTube chat than there are typically, but I don't think he's had like an active YouTube mod in a while. Like, watching some of the pre-streams before this, like there's some comments in that get a pass in the YouTube chat that like I don't see get just immediately like yeeted out of existence, and where I'm just like, there must not be like an active mod on the channel, right? And so like some of the kick chat, what's the word, like poison has been bleeding into the YouTube chat, and it makes it that much funnier.
In AEW, and it just never really went anywhere. Now, they had some matches in AEW that were good, but there was a lot of shit where there was no restraint, and it went way too far with moves. Like, there was a match, I think, was it Pentagon and Orange Cassidy, where they just kept doing Canadian Destroyers over and over and over and over again. But essentially, the Lucha Brothers, I feel, flopped in AEW. All the hype came out of them, and they wanted to leave. And one of the big things about AEW was how moral a promotion they were, how wonderful they were.
I heard about the wrestlers. They wouldn't let him out of the contract. They've locked him in, right? So he had to stick around for like a whole extra year or something. He couldn't leave. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. So they always talk about WWE was the prison. They would hold wrestlers against their will. Well, now AEW has become the prison.
Wow.
And Tony Khan is holding wrestlers against their will and not allowing them to leave the company and go other places. And in a lot of ways, Tony Khan and AEW became every single thing they hated and criticized WWE about. That promotion back in 2021, 2022, I started to think, are they going to be a real competitor to WWE? Are they going to, when they had CM Punk come in, they had Daniel Bryan come in,
right?
And it was, and they had like their own homegrown stars, but eventually they fell into a lot of the same traps TNA fell into, and they relied on bringing in WWE guys instead of building their own, and they've fallen off.
That's exactly what TNA did, and they did follow right in that same suit, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do people actually think Pentagon is going to be who's going to wrestle Gable? Because someone in chat just made a point. Andrade, maybe. Is Andrade a free agent now?
He is. God, can we just let Andrade die? Like, please. This guy, everywhere he goes, he's a locker room cancer. He's a distraction. He goes one company to the other company. I've never been that interested in him. There are a million spot monkey, fucking Hispanic luchadors that could do exactly the same shit he does. Tell me, when has fucking Andrade ever cut a promo worth of shit? Tell me what storyline he was in that you were interested in. But he's married to Charlotte Flair.
Right.
So we all have to endure fucking Andrade's garbage. Fuck that. Then we had Jey Uso versus Drew McIntyre, Phil.
Yes.
Jey Uso comes out with Travis Scott.
That's something we didn't mention. The new theme song of Raw. I was like, oh, come on. This is what they selected. I'm from the era of, we got the guns, the drugs, and my generation, and the hard rock shit. And it's the theme of wrestling. It's always been like the theme of wrestling. And now there's this movement to turn wrestling into like everything has to be this hip hop music. Now listen, I'm not here to crap on hip hop music or whatever, but even the vibe of the song they
Old man yells at hip hop music segment incoming.
Wrestling for me, it's weird. It's a different vibe. It's like almost a relaxing song. Like, I don't want to hear that when people are about to beat the shit out of each other in a ring. It's very bizarre.
Get me hyped up like old Raw intros used to do. I'm not really a Travis Scott guy. I understand it's a new generation. They want to appeal to the youth.
Lady Charisma in the YouTube chat. Old white dudes want dad rock. Shocking. Well said.
But this is my thing. I don't buy into Jey Uso. First of all, I can't even really tell Jey and Jimmy Uso apart. I always thought that they were very mediocre and very mid. And the final nail in the coffin for me on the Usos was their WrestleMania match against each other at WrestleMania.
Okay, so I know I haven't had a whole lot to say, and so like maybe I'm just like looking for something to say, but like look, like the difference in presence on the show is just astounding, right? Like Phil's posture here is just really kind of showing off like the flabby body and like pencil arms, and like he's really like tight and closed in, and it just makes him look like it makes him look like he's really uncomfortable for some reason. And maybe I'm getting too deep on it, but like it seems highly likely to me that given Phil's like lack of social interaction, that any amount of social interaction with outside of like his mom wife like is enough to make him feel anxious. Like that could be what we're seeing here.
He made me feel small to be in his fucking presence. I think he does have a larger than life presence. This new character they've given.
And we're in yet another segment where Phil just like stares at the camera and scans the chat in silence for like 10 minutes because PPP is just overshadowing him. Like his personality is way too big for Phil to like have any kind of interplay with. So Phil just has to sit there nodding his fucking head, like not saying or doing anything of value.
In line with that, I have a question for you because you have been watching wrestling this whole time when I wasn't. So the COVID era was when Drew won the title, and he kind of carried it throughout that COVID era. Do you feel that Drew definitely got screwed being champion at that time? Because a lot of people say if he had just been champion any other time, he would have been known as like a great champion. But instead, it's an empty arena champion. So how can you get behind that?
Dungeon condensation fake in the kick chat. PPP genuinely sounds passionate about this, which is cool to see. Yeah, I mean, PPP absolutely does sound passionate about it. And like I think the point of this LARPer comment here is the juxtaposition of like Phil doesn't sound passionate about it. And like that's not something that we weren't aware of already. Like DSP obviously doesn't give a shit about wrestling the same way that he doesn't really give a shit about gaming. Like it's just a vehicle for him to get money. He's only interested in doing it if he thinks it can get him money, right? Like I said this before previously, but like there was a show that was interviewing our boy John Rambo, and it was after Phil had left Connecticut, and John had reached out at some point and said, "Hey Phil, like I wanted I got time. Do you want to do another episode of Smart Guys?"
They were one of the greats, definitely.
And Phil's response was something to the effect of, "I haven't been watching wrestling, so like let me know if you want to do that, and I'll like catch myself back up." And John was just kind of blindsided by that. He was like, as far as I recall, like he was like, "Well, wait, what do you mean you're not following wrestling? Like I thought you were a fan. I thought this was something we did because we legitimately both liked wrestling." But it was one of those things that was like just incredibly apparent that like when Phil, like when it became obvious to Phil that he wasn't going to make money, like he wasn't going to be able to monetize the wrestling content because John Rambo wasn't available to make it with him anymore, he dropped it like a hot rock, right? So like, and that caught John off guard, and it just really goes to show you like what kind of guy DSP is. Like he just cares about the money. He's always gonna just care about the money, and there's nothing you can say or do that's gonna make him not care about just the money, right?
So, you know, Drew has got his opportunities, and maybe he's just never meant to be that iconic guy because his promos, again, still.
But it strikes me as like exceedingly likely that, you know, DSP and John had this like friendship started, and then John may have mentioned casually like, oh, like, you know, do you watch wrestling? I like wrestling. And then DSP just like jumped on that of like, cool, another way that I can spend time with my one friend John Rambo. Yes, John, I like wrestling too. And then so like DSP like starts watching wrestling. Maybe he watched it like somewhat casually like before that, but like I feel like that was like the gunshot that started the race for DSP to like get involved. And then like as soon as he got involved, like I think that's when Smart Guys came about, because at that point DSP was already reasonably established on the internet as a content creator, and he was like, hey, wow, like we both like wrestling, like we're gonna don't like it's cool that we have the ability to talk about wrestling. Wouldn't it be even cooler if I put a camera in the room and then I could make money off of those segments, right? Like that's how DSP's brain works.
Also suck. It's not just WWE, just those crowds just don't really get so energetic, I guess.
No, it's terrible for boxing. All of my boxing matches are now over in Saudi Arabia, and it's all weird, and the crowd fucking sucks. But they are making the matches happen because they have the money, so I have to respect the sheik over there. So
we got a Review Felt in North Korea with a $5 super chat. Says, let's get some subs today. Very nice. Thank you for the $5 super chat there. Review Felt in North Korea. Two quick tips, and then we can continue on here. Okay. We got a $2 tip. No, I'm not doing a level 1 podcast today. I already announced that I'm not doing a podcast today because this is the premiere of our wrestling commentary show, but thank you for the $2. And then I received a $20 tip from Mars Inhabitant, who says, this is a great show, guys. Thank you so much, Mars Inhabitant. Appreciate that. Cool.
Okay.
All right, we're good.
Okay, we talked to Travis Scott came out smoking a blunt, which was a sign.
Do you think that we're gonna get like a goal segment after this? Like after the wrestling show ends and before the gameplay starts, do you think DSP is gonna do like the weird point down at the goals and be like, guys, we hit 2 goals today and we're already, you know, $33 on our way to the next one. So like let's keep the momentum going and let's like keep giving me more money because that gets us this much closer to the 50 goal reward. Are we going to get one of those because we don't have a pre-stream podcast today? I feel like we will. I feel like we're going to get that.
Absolute best wrestler in ring. I love his character, how he carries himself, how he conducts himself.
I'd also like to say that like I mentioned earlier that it seems highly likely to me that PPP has a roadmap for how he wants the show to go, and like he literally just said like he needed to check his notes and figure out like where they were because you know he has things he wants to talk about, and like that's a perfectly fine way to do it. Like this isn't a knock on like, you know, having an agenda for like your show or whatever, but like this is like that's the exact kind of thing that DSP likes to call scripted, right? Like if you remember the whole one of the blow ups about the locale podcast, locale live, right? Like he thought he had Keemstar up against the wall, and he's like, so it's scripted, right? And Keemstar's like, well, no, it's not scripted. Like we usually have an idea for the show, and we're like, hey, we're gonna go do this idea that we have, and we're gonna shoot it. And he's like, but like once we get on location, the cameras start rolling, like that's the end of it. And he's like, well, that's scripted. And it's like, no, DSP, you're an idiot. Like your most the most charitable attribution to that is that DSP is just an idiot and doesn't understand what words mean, or he's being intentionally obtuse because he's trying to get a gotcha over on Keemstar, and both of those like make him look so bad. And like that's the crazy thing is that after that exchange, I think that was when Keemstar had the interview on the DSP like channel that wasn't on the side scroller thing. Like, you know, Phil thought he was like did such a good job like interviewing Keemstar. It was really funny. It's like watching like I can't say what I was gonna say because that would be impolite.
So every place where these accounts are sold, there's no listing for Down from the Rafters, Phil.
Yeah, that's correct because I did it behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. So we're finally getting to the Down the Raptors thing. I feel like it's worth rewinding for this.
Basically, I think what it is these whale accounts they allow.
But I believe that anybody else could get away with it other than you.
Okay, so we're still talking about Down from the Rafters.
But Phil, there's no
for WWE for me. So
okay, Phil, let's just settle this once and be at WrestleMania. Some people have said it's going to be CM Punk. Some people have said it's going to be Seth Rollins. We're at an interesting point here on the road to Royal Rumble and road to WrestleMania, where all of this stuff is going to start coming together. We had a WWE Mayhem mobile game ad. Are you going to be playing Mobile Mayhem, Phil?
No, I am not. One crappy mobile game is enough for WWE for me. So
okay, Phil, let's just settle this.
Okay, one crappy mobile game is enough from WWE for me, coming from the guy that has played at minimum 2 crappy WWE mobile games. Just throwing that out there.
Once and for all, Phil, you are Down from the Rafters, right?
I was. I'm not anymore, but I was.
But Phil, you are down from the rafters.
I am. Yes.
You are still down from the rafters. You are.
No, I sold the account. I really did.
The guy is just straight lying through his teeth. Look at his facial expression. Like does I hate to be the guy, like I hate to be one of those guys, but it's like, does this look like the face of someone who's telling the truth? Like, no, like this is peak slimy, DSP is obviously anxious because surely he knew that this segment was coming, right? Like, surely this is not something that Triple P was going to like spring on him. Triple P was probably like, hey, Phil, just so you know, like, we're going to talk about it. Like, I'm going to have to bring up WWE champions, right? And so he's some of that anxiety has been dampened by the fact that like he like knows Triple P is going to do this, right? But he's already smiling, right? Like, other detractors who are smarter than me have talked about the whole phenomenon of duper's delight. Like, DSP cannot help but smile when he is lying through his teeth because he thinks that he is being convincing and he thinks he's gotten one over on you.
Phil, there's no. First of all. Here's what I'll just say, Phil. Like, Phil, just please confess. Don't make me do this. Just say you're down from the rafters.
I was, but I'm not. I really did sell the account. We'll have to do this every
Phil,
week.
He really did, you guys.
But Phil, selling the account is against the terms of service from Scopely, so why
Absolutely
isn't it banned?
That's a good question, but there are other accounts that also have been sold that are not banned. Like I said, how I learned that you could sell an account was that someone else who was in a high profile.
Now Phil's trying to give a history lesson to like derail and obfuscate and like move away from the question. He does this every time he has a hard question he doesn't want to answer.
And it's still being used. Everyone's like, what? How is it still being played with? Because they sold it. And basically, I think what it is with these whale accounts, they allow.
But I believe that anybody else could get away with it other than you. Because surely the detractors would be reporting it and it would be a violation of TOS and they'd ban it.
Yeah. I don't know. I like I said, my hands are washed of it. I got rid of it. I don't know anything about it.
And then Phil, there's listings. So every place.
Okay, so this is a classic DSP tactic when someone like he obviously is lying, right? Like look at that smug little smile he's got on. He's obviously lying, right? And so like he did this in side scrollers. He does it all the time. It's a huge tell for him, right? Like someone is pressing him on a question, right? And they have added like another argument, right? They're like, well, Phil, you're telling me this thing, but that here's another piece of evidence that makes me like not think that's true, right? And DSP loves to call that phenomenon of moving the goalpost, right? So like just to pump the brakes for a second, like what's happened here? Like Triple P has asked him, are you down from the rafters currently? Phil said no, right? And so Triple P said, well, Phil, like, are you sure that are you sure about that? Like, is that the answer you want to stick with? Because like, here's like one of the reasons why I'm having trouble believing that, because I am aware that this is your position on it, right? But we are going to dig down into this a little bit, right? So like I already know that that's the canned response that you have. But one of the reasons why I find that hard to believe is because if you were to sell your account, that would be a violation of the terms of service, right? So surely like if you had sold your account, then that account would have been reported for being sold and like the account would have been banned, right? And Phil's response is, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that because I'm no longer associated with it, right? Like the guy is like for a guy who lies so much, he has no creativity, right? Like, because you would think that if like, at least for me, and I understand if this is not like the neurotypical response when being put in that situation. If I was confronted in this way and I was legitimately telling the truth, like as someone who is very intimately familiar with the situation, it would be, I feel, pretty trivial to kind of like come up with an explanation that kind of makes sense, right? If this was true, right? Like if I was in that position, presumably I could say something to the effect of like, well, you know, I'm not familiar, so it's hard for me to make up a lie, right? But it's like, well, the whole like I've tried to convince you in the past that people buy and sell accounts all the time, and those accounts aren't banned. So like clearly there's a way that we do it, and like Phil has already made that excuse, and Triple P has again countered that with, well, surely your account is under much more scrutiny than all of the other accounts. So like, how is it that activity hasn't been banned, right? Like when your geolocation for this account goes from Renton, Washington to, like somewhere in Texas, like overnight, like surely that's something that Scopely would be able to tell. And given that when that happened, they got a flood of reports from Good Samaritan saying that, hey, I have reason to believe that this account has been bought and sold. Like it doesn't make sense, right? But if this guy was telling the truth, right, like there would be presumably a reasonable explanation, and he would be able to provide that reasonable explanation rather than just throwing his hands up and being like, I don't know, dude.
Place where these accounts are sold, there's no listing for Down from the Rafters, Phil.
Yeah, that's correct, because I did it behind the scenes.
Yeah, I did it behind the scenes. Like he's got that shit-eating grin on because he thinks that we are buying this hook, line, and sinker.
Phil, come on, Phil, God damn it, Phil. It's like we've come so close and yet we're so far.
Okay, so I think Triple P's actually trying to do us. I think Triple P's trying to do one for us here. Like Triple P is clearly not willing to like let this go with the normal amount of pushback that to be expected from Phil. And I've said this on like previous like reacts to the guy, like this is, you know, Phil for someone who complains about moving the goalpost, loves to move the goalpost so much, right? And one of the goalposts that we got moved on with the WWE Champions thing in particular was that Phil just was always like, well, it's not me. I don't care about how much money that people claim they spend, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then when he finally admitted, like he said the part that we all knew was true, like, then it was, well, I never spent anywhere near the amount of money that detractors claim. Like he moved the goalpost, right? It was not a talking point that he ever cared to address because he thought that he was just getting one over on everybody by just being like, oh, it's not me, you guys, right? And so now he has to like fight that battle, right? So I think that as detractors, that's kind of one of the last pieces of the puzzle. Like, here's the thing. Right. So like DSP, especially lately, has been loving to say how I came clean about WWE champions. I admitted that I played the game and I was down from the rafters. And like, since I've done that, no one cares. I've also sold that account. That's not me anymore, you guys. Like, you know, believe me when me, Mr. Habitual Liar, when I tell you that I sold that account and that's not me. Right. He loves to say that since he came clean about it, it's been like a non-issue. Right. And it's that like, and he thinks it's because like he thinks that him coming clean about it is like the truth finally coming out or whatever, because he's a narcissist and he thinks that he like he just thinks people believe whatever he tells them, right? But like that is absolutely not the case. Like we as detractors had like airtight case as to this guy was down from the rafters, right? And it was not about Phil like setting the record straight and like finally coming clean and then we could say, yes, yeah, he finally admitted it, now we know for sure. Like that wasn't the case. It was, yes, Phil finally admitted it. Phil is finally, like, when there's in the presence of overwhelming evidence, he is willing to admit not just to his community but to himself that this has been a lie that he's been perpetuating for years. That is why it was a big deal. Not because we were just blindsided by the fact that, oh, Phil was down from the rafter this whole time. Huh? What? Like that was not the case, but because this guy's a narcissist and he thinks he's such a good liar, that is what he took out of it, right? And so that's why when Phil is sitting here with this stupid fucking grin on his face and he's saying, oh, no, I totally sold it, you guys. I totally sold it. It is totally not me. Like, that's what he thinks he's doing. He thinks that he thinks that he is being convincing. And because he is not admitting to it, that like we are not able to have an opinion to the contrary when we have evidence that supports this viewpoint, right? Like with him being the owner of the WWE Champions account in the past, like there was insurmountable proof that DSP owned that account. It was not a matter of debate, right? Now that DSP has allegedly sold the account, we have evidence that suggests, that supports that DSP did not sell the account and that he is lying about it, right? And given that DSP is a known liar, and given that DSP has proposed no evidence to the contrary to support his claim that he actually did sell it, well, the scale is like in our favor, right? And that's what this guy doesn't understand. I don't expect DSP, being the idiot that he is, to get the difference between proof and evidence, but like hopefully the way that I've used those words make it very clear that those are two different things, right? So let's see where PPP goes from here.
Come so close and yet we're so far, Phil.
Listen.
No one cares.
Listen,
everybody that gives you money knows.
Listen, there's something interesting about this, okay? All right? When I was talking to Mike Clone, about the possibility of doing a documentary, okay?
And we're getting another history segment rather than answering the question.
This mythos about this stupid mobile game, right? And he says,
Yeah.
it's just this mysterious thing. Everyone is always talking about his. It doesn't matter. But
It wasn't mysterious. It really wasn't.
He wanted to do a big segment about it.
And like, this is probably Mike Klum trying to get the scoop on the guy. Like, he's feeding him some bullshit to get the actual truth out of him.
Be like, oh, you know
what? You know what? That's actually the best answer you could possibly have given, Phil, and I'm going to accept that answer because, yeah, the mystique of where is the money going, you know? But we know now, Phil. Like, fuck, I don't know. It's like, listen, everybody knows. You know, I know, the Detractors know, the fans know. Nobody really cares, I don't think. But
no one gives a shit. No one ever really did. That's the truth. Is that no one ever did. It was always the bullshit of the
false, untrue. People did care where the money was going because, and I feel the need to reiterate it, because this slime ball right here would beg his audience, manipulate his audience into giving him money, because he would cry poor and say, guys, I do not have money to pay my bills, to put food in the mouths of my family, and the only way out is for you individually to give me money so that I can afford to keep a roof over my head and food in the mouths of my family, right? That is why it was a big deal. That is why people cared, right? Is because you were claiming, you were staking the well-being of not just yourself, but the people in your household and the cat, right? On this lie, right, of why you needed so much money all of the time. And it's because you were spending your money, you were gambling your money away because you were addicted to playing the stupid fucking mobile game, WWE Champions. That is why you were poor all the time, right? And that is what made it not okay. Like Triple P, and we're probably going to hear this segment again, like he gave Phil this excuse of, well, it's your money, it's not anyone's business how you spend it. And that is true to the extent that you are not manipulating people to give you that money, right? By telling them that if you do not give me this money, I'm not going to be able to make my house payment, which may be true. But the part that you're conveniently leaving out here is that you did have money to make your house payment. You did have money to pay your electric bill, your grocery bill, your internet bill, but you spent that money on a stupid fucking mobile game rather than being a mature adult and spending, paying for your bills first and then spending your disposable income on frivolities. And you did it the other fucking way around because you are a huge fucking baby who does not live in the real world. That is why it mattered. That is why it still matters. And DSP thinks that he can get away with it because he has separated that he no longer manipulates his audience in that transparent of a way. Like, it's still pretty fucking transparent. Like, don't get me wrong. But instead of saying, like, I got 2 big bills, I need to pay my trash bill, please give me money. He just says, you guys aren't giving me enough money. You know that I need money, so give me the money, right? Like, he has at least stopped doing that. And I think that is the absolute bare minimum that you could ask from someone in this position. It's like, yeah, we honestly, if you have plenty of money, we don't give a shit. You can spend it on WWE champions. But when you make it a problem of your audience and you real or not jeopardize the well-being of the people and the animal that are within your care because you cannot stop spending your fucking money on a mobile gambling game, that is when it becomes an issue.
Bringing up, and that was it. It's the thing they're gonna.
Well, it's just another thing to whip you through the streets about and fucking rag on you about forever. But I don't know. I think you should just say that it's you and that you still spend thousands of dollars on it. But that's just me. What else do we got here? Okay, The Rock was backstage. He was shaking hands.
Okay, I think Triple P gave it like a reasonable try, right? Like he employed the same tactics that he used to try to get Phil to admit that he was, that he played WWE champions and that he was down from the Raptors. Like, he gave it a good college try, and I don't think he could have pushed Phil any harder without like risking kind of derailing the whole show and then maybe sort of planting a seed of doubt in Phil's mind, right? Like even Triple P admitted like partway through that whole exchange that he was willing to take Phil's answer of like, well, I don't know, and like whatever, like, make up your own excuses. He was willing to take that, but he still kept pushing kind of sneakily, and he was just like, well, okay, I'm gonna accept that as an answer, but I think it'd be really cool and chill of you to just admit it, because we all know it, right? Like, we all know it. Can you just admit it? And then Phil stuck to his guns, right?
I'm all for more titles if they would always treat the titles with respect and handle them well. The problem is with that US title, infamously, they forget about it, or it doesn't mean anything and it gets brushed under the rug, and then there's a year or two and no one gives a shit about it. Sometimes they retire it and then they just bring it back. You know, even the Intercontinental title has suffered from that.
Unfortunately, I feel like that's all of the gold dust we're gonna get, and so now we're like back to suffering, and like it's very possible that Triple P like planned this segment as like, you know,
So maybe they'll do a better job.
we're gonna get some detractor eyes on us because if we're gonna talk about this and they expect that, and like if we talk about it a little bit, then there's the chance that they'll come back and give us their view like for episode 2, right? Like he might have done that calculation. Hard to say.
Ring of Honor titles, even though Ring of Honor is like on life support. Then they have titles from Japan showing up on their show. They have titles from Mexico showing up on their show. I'm not even, there's so many different titles from Japan everywhere showing up on their show. It's like, okay, we're having a match for the ROH Pure Championship, a federation that hasn't really existed in any legitimate way in 10 fucking years. Doesn't mean anything anymore. But okay, we
are slowly but surely getting closer to the end of this god-awful show.
Essentially, the only woman who ever gets a storyline is the woman who's champion. And all the other women basically sit and fucking spin, waiting for their chance to be the champion or the challenger.
Right.
So, but the thing is adding this mid-card title really going to fix that? Because they added women's tag team titles, and they did fuck all with that.
Do they even still exist? Because last time I even heard of those was when it was Naomi and Sasha, and then they left and everything. So are they?
So last I checked, and I don't even know if this is the case anymore, but I think Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill are the women's tag team champions.
Okay.
Which are 2 women that they do want to push and they do want to showcase. And I don't know how much they've been showcased because I haven't been in touch with the week-to-week product as much in the last number of months. But it just feels like to me that this is like throwaway stuff. I will say, they showed Tiffany Stratton in the crowd, that she had cashed in the Money in the Bank and won the women's championship. And I'm excited for that because I think she has a pretty good character. At least she has some character. She has some gimmick to her. She's this rich, spoiled bitch character. I think she's really, really good. And I'm happy she's champion. But I don't know if these mid-card titles are the fix to the issues with the women. I think what would actually be the fix, more so than titles, is to actually write them stories. How about we write them stories first, and then we'll worry about belts later. But whatever, that's going on. Okay, Hulk Hogan comes out. Hulk Hogan comes out, Phil.
With Jimmy Hart.
Oh,
they got to be together as well.
With Jimmy Hart. And man, poor Hogan, bro.
Yeah.
They basically set this motherfucker up to fail when you think about it. Because let's say that this show was in Knoxville or Texas or, in a Republican state or in a, Corpus Christi, Texas, or whatever the fuck, right? He would probably get cheered and people would go along with it. But they put him in the single most progressive state in the city in the United States, in LA, in front of all these liberal actors, Hispanic audience, while he's like showing up to LA in MAGA gear and stuff.
MAGA Powers. His shirt said MAGA Powers instead of Mega Powers, MAGA Powers.
And they just shit on him, dude. And he was trying everything to get a pop. He was shouting out Macho Man. He was throwing out this name, that name, trying to get them to cheer. And they wouldn't fucking do it. And worst part of it all was Hogan goes to do the fucking shirt rip, bro. He can barely rip the fucking shirt. He looks 100 fucking years old. Then as he's like leaving in shame as they boo him out of the fucking building, his shirt isn't fully ripped and it's around his ankles.
Yeah.
So he's like waddling away. It looks like he has his underpants around his fucking ankles. And this is the thing is, if this is a regular thing where Hogan is getting booed and everybody hates Hogan, Hogan is a big sponsor of the show now.
Yeah.
They signed a multi-year deal with Hulk Hogan to promote his Real American Beer and have him on shows. So what are they going to do if he's going to get booed everywhere?
And the other thing is, it's not Attitude Era, so they're not even going to show people drinking the beer. It's not like Austin Era where he's chugging it every week. So I don't know how they're going to promote this product on this supposed PG broadcast.
And they're pointing out people are hypocrites because Undertaker had
So I hate to pause it because God knows we got plenty of time left, right? But I originally, because I'm aware that Hulk Hogan has been, in the MAGA space or whatever. And so when Triple P was talking over this, it occurred to me that this might be a calculated move from WWE, right? They want to put some distance between Hulk Hogan and the MAGA identity and the product that they're offering, right? And I don't think that's easy to do when Hulk Hogan is such a storied element of professional wrestling, right? The dude is, or maybe was larger than life, right? And so if that's your goal, right, you want to put some distance between your brand and this guy, then that's probably the play. Is like you let him like come on the show, and you're like, yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to do whatever you want, and you put him in front of an audience where you know it's going to flop, right? And so like that will maybe like douse some of the interest that the guy has in like being a part of the show and being like front and center. It's a little, maybe that seems less likely if he is such a big backer of the show and such a powerful, you know, force for finance with WWE, that like someone somewhere was like willing to like cut that line and try to like force some distance in there. Because if you legitimately like didn't want him involved, then you could just be like, hey man, like kick rocks and like take your money with you. But like if that's the play, then WWE, like they obviously can't afford that, right? Because I don't think that anyone, because like if they could afford to get away without Hulk's money, like then that, and they wanted to genuinely separate Hulk from like the new face of WWE, like that's what they would have done, right? They would have just been like, hey man, we're okay. Like we don't really want to be like a political show, right? We don't want to be involved in the world of politics. Like we want to be like purely entertainment. And because of like the direction that you've taken your personal life and how like outstanding you are in that aspect, where like we don't like there's no way that we could continue to be partners and have it not taint the brand, right? And so we just want to move away from that and just kind of like have, you know, part on good terms and have that be the end of it. But clearly like that's not something that WWE is in the position to do. And maybe it is, they can do without Hulk's money, but he has such a share in the company itself that they can't just like give him the boot, right? So they're trying to put him in a position where like he thinks it's his idea to take a back seat. Maybe that's what's going on. I can't say, but I think that what PPP is saying is true, that in the event that this was like an earnest, like, you know, we want Hulk on the show and we want him to like be a big thing for the audience. Like if that was legitimate, they wouldn't have done it this way. Right. Because like, if you don't want to have someone like such a pillar of like the industry like come out and be booed, right? For someone who's been like traditionally like a good guy. I'm pretty sure he's always been like a good guy in like the drama. Maybe I'm wrong, because again, I don't follow wrestling, right? Like that's just not the play. I feel like the people at WWE deserve more credit than that, to think that this was something that like they just kind of walked into blindly. And I think that this whole scenario deserves a little more scrutiny.
Donald Trump on with Kane.
Yeah.
And promoted Donald Trump's campaign and Make America Great Again and shilled for it. But they didn't boo him, but they booed Hogan. Now, Hogan did say the N-word, and you remember all that, where
Yes.
he didn't want Brooke having sex with an N-word.
Yep.
And it would be okay if it was a basketball player and he would have a rich N. And Hogan's had such like a sordid history and a sordid past. But it's funny how it goes, because like Triple H and Shawn Michaels, like they did so much degenerate, fucked up shit back in the day, drugs.
Yeah.
And you know, I imagine that a lot of the conversations that the boys would have in the back, especially back then, they probably were all talking like that. There were probably racial slurs and derogatory stuff being brought up. But because Hogan got recorded on a phone call, everybody shits on him. And it was just a bad crowd to bring him out in front of in LA. And this was a real low point for the show and a real low point for Hogan's career. And when you think about what Hogan's done for wrestling, all of the memories, all of the matches, all of the money, a 40-year career.
Right. Well, who remembers it? That's the sad fact. All you remember is what you heard recently. He's pro, MAGA. And remember when he said the N-word. No one remembers the classic stuff anymore. And it's, again, separating the art from the artist, right? He did so much for pro wrestling back in the day, and people just can't seem to do that with him. So you're right. It brought the whole show down. It was kind of embarrassing. I remember when he used to come out and the crowd would get pumped and hyped and, you know, will he have another match? And of course, he's never going to have another match. But, you know, you even think about stuff like that. Now it's just like, why is he even here? At this point, just find another way to promote his beer, because this is not working, obviously.
Yeah, it was really sad to see him treated like that. I don't think he deserved to be treated like that because, you know, if we talk about like the race stuff, he's come back several times since then and been cheered. Yeah. You know, people have given him good reactions and ovations since that happened. I think it was just that it was the LA crowd. And, you know, it's just tough. In the intro package at the very beginning, they were promoting Hogan and how he was a hero and all of this stuff. And it's just a shame. But I think part of it is, too, the audience is just different for wrestling. It's you know, the guys who grew up with Hogan, you know, they're in their 40s now, their 50s now, Are they going out to these wrestling matches? And also, the audience that was there, let's be real, this isn't a common wrestling audience.
Right.
These are people who are paying $2,000.
Like I feel like I have something to say here, but I just don't want to stop because I want to get through this.
Wrestling audience. These are rich Hollywood liberals who wanted to virtue signal and get themselves over by shitting on a legend who, without him, there would be no WrestleMania. There would be no WWE. There would be no wrestling in the form that we have it today at all if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan. But none of these people want to fucking admit that. And it comes to a point where it's like wrestling is a dirty fucking carny business. And some of the people who made wrestling the best that it's ever been were dirty, filthy, flawed, carny fucks like Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon. And I don't know how you can have a WWE without Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon.
Yeah,
They are WrestleMania.
You don't
See, this is like a weird take from Triple P, right? Like, because there are bad people that do great things, right? But like the thing is that like,
the locker room mentality.
when you come out on the other side of that, that doesn't mean that you can't be held accountable for like the bad behavior, right? Like that's so like the thing that Triple P's trying to tell us that we should have some loyalty to these people who are, you know, quote unquote bad actors, because like without them we wouldn't have gotten to the place we are, right? And it's like, well, that may or may not be true, but that doesn't really matter, right? Like the fact of it is that we are where we are now, right? And we can only move forward, right? So like the fact that you have this guy who like, you know, has these bad takes and whatever, and he's not popular with certain crowds, and like, you know, huge swaths of people have like, you know, a misgivings about him being around. It's like, well, like, you know, you didn't have to do those things in order for the business to be successful. Like you didn't have to like, you know,
right?
As far as I know, you didn't have to like say slurs about people to be a successful wrestler, right? Like you didn't have to, you know, throw in with the MAGA crowd in order to like continue being a successful wrestler. So like those are all things that he chose to do. And PPP was trying to sweep for him and be like, well, I'm sure everyone was saying those things. And it's like, well, maybe, but like that doesn't necessarily mean that makes it okay in retrospect. And also like I can't help but think that that's probably not the problem that people have, right? They're probably not thinking, hey, 20 years ago this guy said some racial slurs. Like that's probably not where people's heads are, because people tend to live more in the moment than that. Like so that whole segment, like I don't think it makes a lot of sense if you unpack it, right? And like I've lived through this myself. Like I mentioned in a previous episode of this that like I participate in some like competitive gaming, you know, circles, right? And like there are people like in those circles, like this particular industry or game that I participate in, it's very much like a grassroots kind of thing, right? And so there are people that end up in positions of power that are like the Vince McMahons of the world, right? And they're you know, they're not good people, but they have built something in their time in the space. And it's been my opinion as someone who's like been in these circles for a long time, like decades, is that like the reason why those people, you know, end up at tops of power structures is because that is what they're there for. They're not there to like build a community and like, you know, make something out of nothing. Like they're there because they want power, they want clout, they want money. And so like to say that like, well, this thing wouldn't exist without them, it's like, well, yeah, maybe, but like the fact that they were the ones running the show means that like you're gonna keep good actors out of the space, right? Because they're gonna do whatever is in their power to chase out a good actor, because people who are so interested in hanging on to power like that have it through ill-gotten means, like those are people that are gonna, when they see someone who could potentially disrupt that power structure because that person is you know, unstained, so to speak, like they push them out of those spaces. And I've personally seen it happen. So like this whole thing of like, well, they were there and they built it from the ground up, and like we wouldn't be where we are today, we're standing on the shoulders of giants and they are the giants. It's like, well, that's not necessarily, like, yes, that's true, but that doesn't mean that if they weren't there that someone else wouldn't have done the work and that person wouldn't have been of higher character, right? So like that, I don't buy that argument for a second. I don't think you should either.
And I didn't like to see CM Punk 2 is not, a spring chicken anymore. And for him to be taking that buckle bomb, I think is a bit much of a risk, especially since he's been injured so many times recently. But then Punk hits 2 GTSs in that sequence. I would never have known this, but the WWE fans the wrestling fans of today, they're all about their poetry and their callbacks. It was actually a callback to the finish of CM Punk and Jon Moxley in AEW. And their Shield brothers, it was exactly the same sequence where Punk hit that GTS on Moxley, and then he kind of collapsed into him and hit the GTS again. That's why it was
okay. We are getting there. We're getting there. We're getting dangerously close to the end of the WWE wrestling show.
I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. I think that,
I gotta admit, when there was a big point in time there when I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to sit through this, and I apologize because there are very surely big long stretches where PPP is just giving us backstory on wrestling, and I have nothing to say, and it is what it is. Like, there isn't anything for me to comment on because I don't like wrestling, and here we are.
So his style has aged better, and so when you look at Punk, he's still pretty much the same Punk in ring that he was 10 years ago.
Very close.
That being said, I really don't like Seth Rollins. I feel like Seth Rollins is like a glorified spot monkey. I feel like his promos suck dick. His character sucks dick. I feel like his character peaked in 2015 when he was in the Authority. I feel like those.
I did mention it before. That bag of chips, man, it is calling my name.
The stuff he did with Becky Lynch and his wife and the man and these weird fucking, I don't know how to say it, queer outfits that he would wear, so flamboyant. I just didn't enjoy that.
My take, he really wanted to be the modern HBK, right? He wanted everything about it. He's the modern HBK. His ring style, his flamboyant outfits, everything about him. He hasn't reached that level. He's good. I respect the heck out of the guy, but he never really became the modern HBK. But he is the guy that the company leans on a lot.
And that's where the whole complaint about, I was the company man and you left. Seth, you don't have the ability to leave. If you were good enough at anything else or popular enough to go elsewhere, make movies or be in the UFC or be the top guy in another promotion, you would do it. But you're not. You're Seth Rollins. You're not an icon. You're not a legend. You've never reached the levels that Punk has reached. You never will reach the levels that Punk has reached. And that's why you're stuck in WWE and you'll never, ever be anything else. Now, with CM Punk, I also am really down on CM Punk these days too, because it's ruined. It's ruined because CM Punk, when he got over and he was huge, it was because...
In the kick chat, Born Slippy says, DSP hasn't had much input during the show. Daily Cool 2 packs. He's the dono reading guy.
Broken man who's there.
Well, so I mentioned before, I really wish I did this long running enough to have like a LARPers to watch segment or like a LARPer leaderboard, but Daily Cool 2 packs is definitely on there. I don't think I've seen anyone that can dethrone Sarah Barclay, because like as of right now, Sarah Barclay is easily the funniest LARPer in DSP's chat. But like that was an excellent comment. Well said.
He was that like kissing Vince's ass and shit like this. Punk's not even really embraced that heel aspect. He's still kind of like a baby face. So it's hard to get as excited about CM Punk as I used to be.
Born Slippy follows it up. That's right. This is more of a PPP show with DSP as the guest. I thought it was the other way around. Oh well.
But he really gets cringy about his
I will say Sarah Barclay's not here today. And to be honest, like as much as I look forward to Sarah Barclay's comments, this is probably not a stream where Sarah Barclay would be able to like do very well. I just don't like, as much as I don't have much to say about what's going on the stream. Like I don't think Sarah Barclay would have the opportunity to get in like the hard hitting, tight fitting LARPer comments. So I'm kind of glad that Sarah's not here, because I'd hate to see Sarah like reaching for a comment and then just either be outright ignored because it wasn't relevant, or finally bite the dust.
You got the interference from everyone, so other people are getting involved. You get introduced.
Queen Banana in the kick chat. I like how PPP called Phil out being very obviously lying about selling Down from the Rafters. Yeah, like I said, the guy's a liar, and we all know that we have very strong reason to believe that he is lying about selling the account. And unfortunately, I think that's one of those things that's not going to be like, I don't think that's something that we're going to be able to prove like with the like original ownership of the Down from the Rafters account, not unless we get like another line app situation that happens. Like if there is some way to like verify that the line app that's associated with the Down from the Rafters account is still tied to Phil, that might be part of the, that might be some motivation for it, because like let's face it, like the guy is too cheap to just buy another pay for another cell phone and just use that for his Down from the Rafters account. Like, he's not going to do that. And I forget how we got the lineup info in the first go round, but given that that's transpired, I think Phil is too careful to like let that info slip again. I think it's because someone was like in a guild with Down from the Rafters, so like they had access to like the lineup information, and they saw that it was verified like through his current mobile number, right? And like, even if we did have that information, I feel like it'd be pretty trivial for DSP to lie and say, oh, well, you know, you can only verify an account with like one number, which there's no way that's true, but he would say that, and then he would think that he convinced everybody that, yeah, well, it was my account and that's why it's verified with my number, and like, you can't change that after the fact, so like, it's always going to be my number. Like, there's no way that's true, but like, that's what DSP would say, and he would be convinced that he has lied and fooled everybody, right? So like, I'm not sure what sort of proof we would need to like really make it like airtight. Like, I'm not sure what additional proof is possible to acquire that would like really put the nail in that coffin. Because like I said, I think the argument's pretty strong as is. So like, if you have an idea and you happen to be listening to this, like, say it in the comments. I genuinely want to know.
Launch celebration. I liked that there were 4 matches that were given time. None of them were rushed or botched, and there was a title change. That's always a nice thing. I like that there was some promo stuff, but it wasn't overbearing. They didn't go too much into comedy this week, which was good. Overall, if you were presenting this to a brand new audience, I think this is an impressive work. Like, this was an impressive body of work that they showed, and it will get people to watch next week. But the problem is, first impressions are everything, but what if they can't live up to this next week? What if next week the production value dips? Now you've got lesser matches, or the matches have crappy endings.
We got a LARPer in the YouTube chat. I think every sentence from Phil has started off, well, I haven't watched wrestling in 5 years, or in the early 2000s. Yeah, I mean, it's the guy, so like, anytime the guy has anything to say about anything, it's going to start with a history lesson, right? Because again, nothing interesting ever happens to the guy, and his only interactions with the real world have happened 20 years ago in the past. So like, anytime the guy has anything to say, he has to tie it back to an experience he had 20 years ago, because the guy like has lived in his studio, and I use that word very generously, for like the past 2 decades, right? Like, that's a big part of why, right? Like, Phil can't just be like, yeah, I was hanging with my friends and we were at this, we went axe throwing and this happened. Like, that's not DSP. Like, he doesn't have friends, he doesn't leave his house, like, he's never gonna have any like modern touchstones that don't come to him in the form of a screen, right? And like, at some level, that's like really sad.
You're not gonna have the Undertaker every week, you're not gonna have The Rock every week, and Hulk Hogan every week, and you're not gonna have these big consequential matches like the Tribal Showdown. You're not gonna have a CM Punk versus Seth Rollins in the main event every week. You're not gonna have all of it be so loaded with top level talent. You're going to have the mid-card guys. You're going to have the job guys. And so it's going to be tough, when you come back next week and you're bringing in these job level talents and stuff like this. And I really do also. 3 hours was good for this show because they had a lot.
Right.
But 3 hours every week, I don't like it. I feel like wrestling is best as a 2-hour presentation.
Yes.
Even a 1-hour presentation. When Lucha Underground was an hour, or even when TNA was an hour back in the day, it always left you wanting more. You would want to see more. 2 hours, you could still be left wanting more. But at 3 hours long, you've had enough.
Right.
And then it's like, then you're going to have another show a couple days later, SmackDown, NXT, pay-per-views, and it's just a lot.
It's very exhausting to stay in line with all of that stuff, because the thing is, then you might miss a show, and the next show, what the hell just happened? Now everything's different. It is something that requires you to try to at least follow the generalities of all the plot lines. And maybe I'll say this. Maybe I would have actually liked this Raw even better if I had understood the plots. I was going into it cold, not really knowing that these were culminations of plot lines, and maybe I will enjoy the product more moving forward.
Okay, so is the guy telling us that that he hates it when you miss an episode of the show and you can't just not watch that episode and jump into the next episode and then immediately understand what's going on? I feel like that's what he said, right? Is that not what he said? Is that I hate it when I miss an episode and then I come back to it, not having watched the episode that I missed, and not having watched the episode that I missed, and it annoys me that I can't figure out, like, I can't just follow what happened. Like, does the guy want like a recap? Like, honestly, all right, I shouldn't even bother saying this because I just want this train wreck to be over. But like, I think what the guy's trying to tell us is that he wants a last time on WWE segment at the beginning of every episode so that he doesn't have to like watch every episode. But like, isn't that the point? Isn't that what you want out of a, like serialized storytelling? Is you want each like episode to be to like have something important happen in it, right? Like that's literally the definition of like what a filler episode is an episode where nothing interesting happens in it and you could just skip it and not have lost any of the lost anything, right? Like, I think that's the hallmark of a great show is that, yes, you do need to watch all of the episodes because if you don't, then you're going to miss something, right? Because if you have episodes where that I can just skip, why did we have the episode? Like, please respect my time as a viewer by not producing shows that don't mean anything, that don't contribute to the overall story that you're trying to tell. Like, that's literally the point of episodic television or episodic narrative. Like in this guy, like color me not surprised that this guy just does not get it whatsoever.
The chemistry going, getting the flow going, getting back into the swing of things.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I think the shows will improve. Bear with us as we get into the groove of things. But I had a really good time. I hope, Phil, you had a good time as well.
Absolutely.
And
this was great. It's refreshing. I haven't talked about pro wrestling in so long. It was something that was a big part of my content over a decade ago. And it's cool now that these things are becoming more available. Like just having the Netflix, now I can watch Raw on demand whenever. It's easier than back in the day when you had to like...
I would love to see like someone like run the numbers on this and figure out like how much time, like how much airtime Phil spent talking and how much time PPP spent talking and how that shakes out, because like I get the whole point is that PPP is supposed to be giving Phil all the context so that they can like discuss the show properly, but like goddamn, can you imagine if this was the other way around? Like if Phil was the one doing 90% of the talking, like this show would have been absolute dog shit.
People like to have negativity and complain.
It's
this
true.
was a pretty positive review of Raw. I'm excited about it, and so I'm being positive. But I feel like if we do AEW, people might be into seeing us tear it apart and shitting on the booking. And Phil's never seen it, but again, we're going to need the support for that. And this is a pretty niche show. It doesn't really appeal to everybody. Wrestling is a niche product, as we explained from the outset. And so because of that, who knows how much of this will do. But if the support is there, if the monetary support is there, then, who knows, we'll do.
See, this is how you manipulate your audience, right? Like PPP, he is being a little manipulative here, right? He's like, hey, we laid the groundwork earlier in the show to demonstrate that we believe that this is a niche product. Like wrestling is a niche product, so a show talking about wrestling is therefore also a niche product. That is true, right? And now it's, we're trying to wrap up the show and like we got to ask for some money, right? And like, I get it. Like that's how Kino Casino rolls. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that they ask for money on their show, similar to the extent, as far as I understand, similar to the extent that Phil does, right? It's never anywhere near as egregious, but like he circled back to that and he was like, hey guys, like we want to keep doing this. We had a good time, but like you need to actually give us money. Like, and he came out and said it, like we need you to pay us to do this show if you want to keep seeing the show in the future, right? And that level of honesty, while like I said, I feel like it's a little manipulative because of that. PPP is being completely upfront about it. He is like, hey, I said this before, and like now I'm tying that in to tell you that, hey, we need money to do this show, and it is a niche product. We don't expect like a bunch of people to give us money, so please finance the show. Like he's just outright saying it, and that makes it so much more palatable to be like, hey, look, like, you need to give us money if you want the show to continue. Because DSP, like, he hates saying that. Like, he loves to sprinkle words like support and positivity and stuff like that on top of when he's just asking you for money. And so having someone just outright ask for money to produce content is so refreshing in juxtaposition to the guy, because he is almost incapable of doing that, right? And I said it before and I'll say it again. It's because like, it is about the money, but the money is also like the money is a it is a reinforcement that you like and care about DSP, right? Like, because we've seen even in the times when DSP has more money than he can spend, when it's coming in faster than he can send it out, which is saying something for the guy, he still begs because he needs that reassurance. He needs people saying, Phil, I care about you. And the best way to be sure that someone is being genuine when they say they care about you is when they give you money, because money is, that is the portable format of value. Any LARPer can make an account and just be like, Phil, we love the content. Please keep making the content. I can't, I never miss a pre-stream podcast, but when you say that and then you put $10 on it, that makes it mean something to Phil, because it's a lot harder. It literally costs you more to fake when you put a LARP comment on with some money attached to it than just saying something in his chat.
Of streaming Dark Side Phil, it's tough to make time, and we went long on this too. What did we do, 2.5 hours?
Yeah, but this is the first episode.
Oh my god, it certainly felt longer than that.
As we get more into the gist of it, into it, moving through and being able to hit the topics faster, and we don't have the big intro and everything, it's going to be a smoother show, the more that we do it. It's going to, become more streamlined, so.
Well, Lady Charisma had a good point. I think it would be better for him to go in cold and not with a preconceived notion that it's bad. It's true. We shouldn't go into it expecting it to be bad. We should have an open mind. Mind you, I haven't really watched AEW consistently in, a long time now, 6-7 months at least, and I hadn't even watched the last couple pay-per-views from them. So maybe things have gotten better, but it seems to me it's pretty ice.
I do want out. I'm kind of ready to go. We are dangerously close, and then we have a decompression segment, I'm sure.
Didn't know
All
how
right,
long it was going to go
and
today.
I'm going to be on Kino Casino tonight. I think we're having Steve Cambion on, although apparently Ralph has died. I've received word from Andy that Ethan Ralph may have passed away.
What?
And so that may have to supersede.
What on earth? That's for serious. I apologize. I laughed because
Cambion.
I didn't realize if that was serious. I thought it was a joke.
I don't know. No, I actually don't know. I think he might really be dead this time.
Oh my god.
So we'll see. Probably not though. He's probably just passed out somewhere in the gutter, pissed his pants. Okay, we'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Hold on. One last.
Wait.
Dank Sneed Pimp just gifted 50 subs on Kick. 50 subs at the end.
Hey, maybe we will do an AEW show after all.
Wow.
Maybe we'll have to set a goal for that next week. If we get a certain amount of support, we'll have to talk it over on the business end of things.
Sure.
And see what makes sense and is viable for the schedule. But I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Wow, what a slog that was to get through. I mean, there was definitely some moments that were like mildly entertaining, but good God, it was not worth sitting through 2.5 hours for what we got out of it. I mean, like I said, Triple P, I think, did his best with the whole like Phil, come clean about down from the rafters thing. Like, I think he tried to throw us a bone there, but obviously the guy was just not having it. I don't see Triple P like coming back to that well in the near future. It's possible that it'll come up again like on the future show, but I do not see Triple P like bringing it up every episode like that. Like, Triple P knows that's not the play, right? Like, DSP would like if he did that, like eventually, like DSP would probably, I feel like even DSP, the most non-confrontational guy you've ever met, would eventually be like, hey man, like I'm not comfortable talking about this anymore. Like, please don't ask me about it on the show. Right. And he would do it in the most like pathetic, like appeasing way possible. But like even DSP would like pump the brakes on that after being pushed like 2 or 3 times in a row. So like, I would not foresee that happening. I think it's really fair to say that this show is not for the detractor crowd, right? Like, Phil did get a lot of money for it, and I think if you genuinely cared about wrestling, like Triple P could just do this show by himself and you wouldn't need to have Phil on it, like, because like, I mean, it's the guy, he sucks, right? Like PPP did almost all, I'm going to take that back. PPP really did all the heavy lifting for this show. Phil spent 99% of his time just like nodding his head and eye fucking his webcam. So like, he really didn't add anything to the show. There's no reason why PPP like couldn't do this show by himself. And like, Phil's just not that interesting as a straight man or a color commentator to like really justify his presence on the show. Like, it wouldn't surprise me that if eventually Triple P decided that like he wanted to stop doing this show with Phil, but would do it in like some flavor, like by himself or maybe with Andy Worski, right? Like, and maybe that's like one of the I'm not saying that this is PPP's plan, but I feel like it's probably occurred to him that if he does a handful of these shows with Phil, especially if like the money from like Phil's side starts to dry up, like it's very possible that he could just have like do this show in another iteration, like on Kino Casino or on like whatever solo platform he has, and just leave Phil out of it. But he could extract himself from this situation in such a way that Phil was very likely to just plug the show for him. Right. And so, you know, part of this was probably Triple P like looking at, okay, well, what portion of Phil's audience is going to give us money? And if I have to, do I think that I can, you know, eventually like move in a direction where I get those people like on my own show, and then I don't have to split the revenue with the guy that like doesn't actually contribute in any way to the show being successful, other than like he has a like for as few viewers as Phil has, he does have a really wide reach. And not that it's because like people listen to his opinions and internalize them and think they're good and matter, but because he literally has so many eyeballs on his content, like all of the detractor channels, like, you know, added together, he has a lot. His content reaches the eyes and ears of a lot more people than his analytics would lead you to believe, just because there's so many people that refuse to engage in his content by watching it on his channel. And I'm one of those people, like I'll never go to DSP's channel and like watch a video there because like I don't believe in giving the guy a view, right? Like he's not that important to me, as weirdly as it sounds. Like I know that I just spent like 3 hours or whatever like fucking reacting to this bullshit show, but like if for whatever reason Phil, like, you know, Phil won the lottery and he sued all the detractors and we weren't allowed to restream Phil anymore, like I'd probably just move on to find something else to do with my time. Like, because honestly, like Phil, the space that Phil resides in my life is like, normally I need something to listen to. Like I just need sound. Like I can't have silence, and I haven't been on like a music kick lately, because normally that's what I do, is I would just put on like a radio show and just like listen to music over and over again. But like since I've kind of become more involved in the detractor sphere, like I feel, you know, I do have some you know, something of like a parasocial relationship with some of the big detractors in the space. Like they're people who like I genuinely enjoy listening to their takes, and like I think that I think they're funny, and you can't get that out of like just like a straight up like music show, right? So like usually my involvement in the detractor sphere is I pull up an ALT video or a detractor beam video or an Almighty Tevin, you know, video, and I just play it and I listen to it while I go about my day and I do my job, right? Because I need the noise, but it like, you know, so like that's where I'm at with it. And if Phil, you know, and if all the detractors like got shut down overnight, I would just find something else to fill that space for me, right? So as much like content about Phil that I consume, that he really doesn't take up that big of a space in my life. And as weird as that may sound, given that I've over the past like 7 days, I've made something like, you know, 10 hours of content on the guy, right?
Important question, because with my setup being messed with for the show Smart Guys earlier, I just want to make sure I didn't screw anything up. Hopefully you guys on both sides can hear me on YouTube and on Kick, and I just need to get the chat open on the YouTube side. I am just coming off of my first episode ever of the Smart Guys Revival over on DSP React, and I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts. Like, I had a great time doing it. We're going to play some Indiana Jones for about an hour and a half here. I'm only going to go till 4 p.m. like I usually do.
Moon Knight in the Kick chat. How can anyone believe he sold an account on the back end when he spent tens of thousands of dollars on that account? You have to be censored word. I think it starts with an R.
Tangents a little bit that probably will be better moving forward. But I thought it went well. Hold on, let me get the chat open so I can see what you guys on the
We got Jade Rasmussen in the chat. What's up, Jade? Sup, my ooses. Sup, Jade?
It was a great first show. Monty Mole said he skipped it. He's not interested in wrestling, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to watch wrestling content if you're not interested. Kyle says it was okay, but the show kind of dragged. Yeah, because here's the thing. It was a 3-hour Raw to cover, plus, you know, it was the first show. So we had to cover some ground, you know, talking about how I'm coming outside of the perspective that I don't know what was really going on. I didn't follow the plot lines and all.
Yeah, we know that already. DSP, you've gave us the I haven't followed wrestling for 5 years segment like 3 or 4 times before the show aired. And we do have Sarah Barclay in the chat with a heart emoji.
Jade says, you knew Tex or not. What do you mean by that, Jade? Some people really liked it. It was good background noise for studying, but I'm not really a wrestling guy. The thing is, a lot of people who have been long-time wrestling fans probably aren't watching my content anymore because I stopped covering wrestling. You know, like I was covering wrestling regularly every week for 3-4 years with Smart Guys, and then I stopped for a very long time. So I'm not surprised if that audience isn't around anymore.
Yeah. Okay. So he admits that he is capable of understanding this, and this is a very common complaint that the guy this is a very common line of thinking that the guy just refuses to acknowledge. Right. Like again, someone. DSP loves to complain about RPG overload, and someone at some point said, DSP, if you stream the games that you like, then eventually the people that come to watch your streams will be there to watch you stream the games that you like. And DSP went on this big rant about how that's not true and how the person saying this is a big dumb idiot when the guy is now admitting that this is how it works. So it's like he's the guy, he lies all the time. I don't know what else to say, but it just shows that DSP is only willing to accept reality when it's convenient for him.
Same time, maybe I'll get some people back. I don't know. It definitely was a mix between my fans and Kino Casino fans for sure. I liked doing it. Oh my God, hold on a second. Did you guys realize something? I just want to say something. You ready for this? There were no technical issues. You realize that? And I have to pat myself on the back for a second.
Yeah, he wants ass pats.
I'm the one who did the entire OBS. I'm the one who had Discord going. I'm the one who...
Yeah, did Darziak show you how to do it, Phil?
And it didn't fuck up.
There's no way you did that all on your own. There's no way that you clicked the plus button in OBS to make a new scene for that. You are not capable of doing that.
Even a broken clock is what? Right twice a day or something, they say? I don't... Actually, that's probably not even the right saying. But,
we got another comment from our favorite LARPer Trills.
He says, I thought Triple P was very thought out and well articulated. You've got a lot of catching up to do, so every point won't start with a history lesson, but it was a fun show. You're absolutely right. Once I'm watching the product regularly, and I understand... it'll be a lot more smooth.
If I am remembering correctly, this Trills person was the guy that said that DSP, didn't follow through on the last, retro marathon he promised, and that was a big, segment where DSP, bitched him out because he felt like he was being gaslit, and, here we are again, making, we're back, making comments in the chat. Sarah Barclay at DSP Gaming. It was a good show. PPP is such a good showman and knowledgeable. Love the little clip of you and Rambo at the beginning. Wish you could have given Rambo a shout out though.
PPP is a good showman and knowledgeable. Love the little clip of you and Rambo at the beginning. I wish you could have given Rambo a shout out. We did briefly. We addressed it, remember? Right at the beginning. At least I thought we did.
So this is a pretty strong LARPer comment from Sarah Barclay, right? Because you have to not say the part that you want to say, right? So here's Sarah Barclay saying how great PPP was in the show, and then just not saying how Phil did, right? And so the implication is that you did shitty because if you did well, I would have said that, right? And then but I didn't say that, which means you did shitty, right?
Something was going to be off. I have to do this.
So while I don't think it landed the way, with the punch that we have come to expect from Sarah Barclay, that's still a well thought out LARPer comment.
Correct size. It is too big right now. Out there is more reasonable. Indiana Jones. We'll see. If you think I should resize it, let me know. Okay.
I hate that we have to do this every time now.
With Ashton's camera and audio.
Oh, I'm not sure where to put my camera. I don't know how big it needs to be. Make another fucking scene. This is why I refuse to believe that DSP set that whole show up without any hand holding. There's no way, because the guy could just make another scene for every game that he's playing in his rotation. He could spend literally the 15 seconds it takes to adjust his layout one time, and then it would just be done for any time that he needed to stream that game, and he just refuses to do it for reasons that are not comprehensible by the common man.
I'm not going to reset that counter. Absolutely not. If I get no support for the next 90 minutes, I don't give a shit. That was great. Thank you, guys.
Another great comment from Trills. Hopefully DSP reads this one.
Yes, I was utilizing the tap to mute like this.
Okay, DSP's not going to read it. So if you're a listening style enjoyer, Trills says, at DSP Gaming, something I noticed is when you utilize the mute button for the throat clearing, it makes for a very much more professional experience. I noticed you were using it for the show just now. Yeah, and that's, like, again, that's, you can't say the part that you want to say. The part that you want to say is like, DSP, like, this is not a big ask for you to like mute your mic when you are like coughing and hacking, right? Like, and so you say that you present it as a positive thing. And then in like DSP, like again, the zero self-awareness, he's not going to pick up on what you're trying to tell him is that you should do this more often for your other content because it makes the content better. Like that is not going to register to him.
I was utilizing the tap to mute to clear my throat, which I definitely can do when I'm able to do it. The problem is a lot of the times if I have to sneeze or cough or whatever, I don't know it's coming. And then I can't do it. But if Ash was talking and I got to clear my throat, I'd easily use that. And that's why I wanted this.
He's so full of shit.
Easier than fumbling through 2-3 menus to find the mute button here. Just tapping the mic is great.
You can hotkey it. You have a Stream Deck. You can just hotkey your mic, mute and unmute, make it the same key. So you have to press one button, one physical button that is on your desk that is presumably near your hand. Because why would you put the Stream Deck away from where your hand is going to be? Like you could just do that, but like again, the guy is incapable and incompetent, so he'll never implement such an obvious solution unless someone like explicitly explains it to him and then convinces him that it's worth doing. And like no one's gonna do those things because he's DSP. You can't get through to the guy.
Okay. I gotta readjust because I'm gonna be facing like this. So I just got to readjust the mic.
So again, and now we get a mic adjustment segment, like our daily twice daily mic adjustment segment. Are we gonna get a bag into bathroom is my question. Like we didn't see Phil drink a lot of seltzer during the show, so I'm thinking we might have a run back of no bathroom break here.
It's gonna be a 50-50 show, But it's really none of anyone's business how any money is split or whatever. It's really not any of your business. But, we're both going to be putting effort into it and we're both going to benefit from it.
I would love it for people in the chat to just be like, well, I think PPP did more work, so I think he should get a bigger split, even though it was on your channel. I would love to see that happen.
We all up in each other's business about money and shit. Do you ask Andy and Ash how they split stuff from Kino Casino? You go on their show?
No, because you make your content about the money. Your content is always about money. That's what it boils down to. So it is totally reasonable for your chat to be asking questions about revenue split, even if you didn't have LARPers in the chat, because literally that is all you talk about is how much money you need and how you don't have enough of it.
Very knowledgeable. I agree, Bono Stagmo. He knows his shit. I figured he did. He seems to be a longtime wrestling fan like I am, only he hasn't stopped watching.
Yeah, Phil, longtime wrestling fan, stops watching wrestling.
I really believe that.
Will only go back to watching wrestling when he thinks he can make money off of it.
Let's see here. Captain DCW says, funny thing, it snowed here. They didn't put my monitor on my porch. They put it near my mailbox. It said deliver, but I couldn't find it. Oh, man. Especially with people, stealing stuff off people's porches and stuff these days. I'm sure that wasn't a very good feeling. Where do I think I could improve? Number one, being more knowledgeable about the product, right? I need to be more knowledgeable about the product. And I'm not knowledgeable about the product. The more I watch, the more I absorb, the more I'll have to add, right?
So dark side dabbing is like absolutely a LARPer.
Ash has a lot of knowledge and a lot of things to say, but we definitely could have cut the length of the show down. It was 2.5 hours and it could have been 90 minutes if we kept it moving. So trying to keep the show on the rails and not go on tangents. And I think maybe I could do more of that corralling of the show while Ash goes.
Oh yeah, DSP could corral Ash, right? Okay, sure.
That's what I can do more of. So
dark side so we know dark side dabbing is a LARPer, right? I mean, like with that name, plus like they've made comments in the past that just they're very firmly in the LARPer camp. And like I think that this was an attempt to get some gold dust out of the guy. And on it, maybe it's just because I'm tired and like I'm sick of sitting here listening to this fucking doofus go on and on. But to me, this wasn't like excellent attempt, but no cigar.
You loved Roman versus Solo, but Seth versus CM Punk was slow. For me, Roman versus Solo was the best match of the night. It really was. That was like the essential Raw match. It had everything. It had drama. It had good wrestling. It had people running in and injecting, but it had a solid ending. Like, that was my favorite match of the night by far. So, okay. So, guys, we got about 90 minutes to play some Indiana Jones. Let's do it. Let's jump in. So that way people who are craving Indiana Jones get some content today.
Oh, yeah. We're craving it, Phil.
On an entire stream because we did that. Like I said, that show will become more streamlined. I think that the sweet spot would be anywhere 90 minutes to 2 hours long, and we'll get there once we do the show more often.
Okay, is it time to go?
Sure Shot says, I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time after I completed this game, and while the movie was decent, I think that The Last Crusade is marginally better.
Okay, once he like is actually in game and is like moving his character around, like we'll call it there.
Captain says, I grew up with WWE when they were going into the PG era. Cena will always be my favorite. He was my Hulk Hogan. There you go. That's exactly how I described him on the show today, actually. Sarah says, don't undersell yourself in your knowledge. Sometimes you just have to fake it till you make it. Have that showmanship like PPP and bluff your knowledge. Just lie. Just lie horribly. Sounds like a good philosophy, doesn't it?
Yeah, note that Sarah Barkley did not say to just lie.
Drift there for a second. That's not good. It was moving left and I wasn't doing that. Huh. Okay, let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Indiana Jones. And
Okay, so I think that since YouTube mode is officially on, I think we're okay to call it there. So, let's get out of here. Okay, so that was the wrestling show with Ashton. I call him Triple P and the guy. And I think that was a hell of a slog. We got a little more content than I think it was reasonable to hope for. But it could have been like a wild show. Like it very much could have been, but that's not obviously not the direction that PPP wants to take the show in. So like just a like recap, I think it's highly possible that like PPP is just kind of feeling this out and seeing where it can go and just trying to get a handle on like how many people from DSP's audience are like legitimately interested in the wrestling show, because like it's obvious that PPP is very interested in wrestling. Like he genuinely cares about wrestling, which is totally fine. And if that's true, then he probably genuinely would love to do a show about wrestling and get paid for it, right? So it's highly possible that like PPP knows that his current Kino Casino audience is not big enough to justify having like a wrestling show with like just him, right? And so this could be like, it's possible that PPP is figuring that he's going to give it a shot with Phil, and if it doesn't work out, or he feels like it's not fair to him that he's doing the lion's share of the work and like not getting the lion's share of the profits, it could be that he'll just kind of like, have a talk with Phil and be like, hey Phil, like I think we gave it a good run, but it didn't go, it wasn't quite what I was hoping for. So, I think I'm just gonna take a step back from doing the wrestling thing. And I might come back and like have do a show on my own and maybe see how that pans out, because I haven't tried it yet. Like you could see PPP like doing that in a way like very easily that would like get Phil to like step away from the show voluntarily, and also like plug the new show, the Just Ashton show, on wherever it is that Ashton wants to have it, right? So like I'm not saying that is Ashton's plan, but I think that Ashton probably recognizes that is a potential outcome, where like a potential way he could salvage this if this DSP is just, if in the event that DSP is just not worth doing the show with. And I honestly don't think DSP is. Like he's so boring. Like and that may get like, he may become less boring in this show as he like gets more involved in the wrestling, current era wrestling. I don't see it happening. Like I don't think his passion's there for it, right? Like there's very few things that DSP is actually passionate about. Gambling is absolutely one of them. We've seen how his face lights up when he plays Bellotro, and how when he spends money in WWE champions. So like this ain't it. Phil isn't gonna give you the kind of content that you want out of this PPP. I am mildly curious to like check back in and see how this whole thing's doing in like 6 months. I don't think it'll make it that long. I legitimately don't. If this is going to be like a weekly show, I see Triple P giving it to, like 4, maybe 6 episodes before he's going to like look himself in the mirror and be like, is the juice worth the squeeze on this one? Am I getting what I need out of this to continue doing it? And is the guy pulling his weight? And I think that like, remains to be seen like how much support they're going to be able to rake in doing this. But I think that in 6 months time, if Triple P looks in the mirror and he goes, is it worth doing this content with the guy? Maybe. Is the guy pulling his weight? Absolutely not. If today's pedestrian performance from the guy is any indicator, like PPP is just going to carry the show hardcore because of the two of them. PPP is the legitimate wrestling fan, right? And there's, I think if there's not a whole lot of, from what I've seen today in the show, there's not a whole lot that would convince me that DSP is an important part of the show. Like I feel like this is something that Ashton could do on his own if he really wanted to. But maybe Ashton really just wants to have a second person there because he's comfortable with the 2-man dynamic, right? Because he does the Kino Casino show with Andy Worski, and maybe he just wants another person, quote unquote, in the room, just to make streaming that much easier, right? So we'll see how it pans out. Like I said, I was gonna react to the guy until I went back to work or whatever, and so I'm back at work now, and it occurred to me that most of the detractors I watch, they don't spend every day looking at the guy content, and I think that's important, right? Because the guy, he repeats himself so much, and that's actually kind of a boon for us, like for us detractors, because that means that you can tune in as a detractor and watch the Prestream podcast like once a week, and like you kind of get like everything, like you get everything you need to know, because the guy he incessantly repeats himself. Like the content from yesterday is the content today, and also the day before that, and the day before that, and the day before that. So like the odds of you like just missing something is pretty low, especially when you have time to like watch highlights and whatever. So I might come back to do this. As much as I've been bitching and complaining, and as much as it has at times been a hell of a slog to get through this, I genuinely did, like, there was parts of this I genuinely enjoyed. And just being like, hey, the guy said this, and this is why that's wrong and just doesn't make sense if you think about it. I actually enjoyed doing those segments. And that's part of what motivated me to like, try this whole little venture out in the first place, was like, I'm listening to DSP and he just says something so stupid. And I'm just like, that makes zero sense. And like, this is why. And I haven't had a way to like articulate those in a meaningful, like a meaningful venue or whatever. So yeah, I can see myself doing this again. So I don't know, maybe this will be like a weekend thing. So we'll see. So anyways, in the event that you watch this, thanks for watching, and maybe we'll see you again.